Maybe you can actually, maybe instead of assuming what me and Johan are saying, maybe
Wait,
instead of assuming what we're saying, you can let me get it out once, maybe one time.
Okay,
Never did I say anything about what you think or feel. I was giving my thoughts about the question that Kalinda asked me. It's not about you.
I'd like to be able to actually finish the argument I tried to make 14 times once.
Yeah, I'm doing what I said anyway. Yeah, but it is important to remember, like, just for the civil society thing, besides the woke part, what are you doing as the woke people to appeal to people who don't like you and don't like your politics, right? Because the thing is, like, if we look at the Kalinda Core community or whatever, there's a lot of people who are very sympathetic to Jews as people. There's a lot of people who are great and they're clearly not racist, and they go above and beyond, because the question isn't really, are you racist or not? The question is, how do you treat people, right? Are we treating Jewish people well, not just not racistly, right? And there's a lot of great stuff there. Now, if we change that question and we ask people, are you voting in the political interests of Jewish people? The answer is probably we go almost zero, besides the Jewish people or the Israelis who don't get to vote in American election. The answer is probably zero. 0%, maybe like 1%, maybe 2%, maybe if there's an extreme issue like Graham Plattner, you might vote against it or whatever, but in general, we're not voting for that, right?
But what do you consider to be voting in the interest of Jewish people? How does that apply? Because, and this is something that I think really sucks too. Before you answer the question, I think this is really unfortunate as well, is because it, like, for example, Dr. Avi, one of the things that he cited as for why, like, he would have voted for Trump, although I think he would have even absent this, is that he felt like anti-Semitism within the Democratic Party was being tolerated too much. There are people here in Canada, apparently, like, I guess I heard from Aristocracy that more Jewish people in Canada are now wanting to vote Conservative because they feel like the Liberal Party isn't doing enough to address their issues, and like the issues of anti-Semitism. And obviously, like, at least here in Ontario and in Toronto, things are like crazy. I don't actually know, like, how much hate crime has gone up, but I understand Jews probably not feeling safe in a place like Toronto, especially if you're walking around while these, like, crazy pro-Palestine protests are going on, where people are shouting unhinged shit in Arabic about, like, Jews and stuff. Yeah, it just doesn't. But yeah, like, do you understand what I mean, though?
Yeah, I get exactly what you're saying. So I can give a great example. Okay, on this stream, we watched Kat Abu Ghazaleh, you know who that is. And I think we generally got an overall positive impression as an audience of her. I fucking hate her. She said that Jewish civil rights on campus were a great replacement theory. Now, from that one sentence, I know she is going to fight against Jewish civil rights. And not only is she going to fight against it, but she thinks it's fucking great replacement theory, which is a Nazi theory, or maybe not Nazi, maybe, you know, that's too broad of a term, Nazi, but it's a conspiracy theory where Jewish people are importing minorities to eradicate the white race. That is Jewish civil rights. So no one cared enough to, like, be like, oh my God, this is fucking insane. I did. But most people didn't, you know what I'm saying? And you can vote on whatever you want. It's your right to vote, but you're not entitled to anyone else's votes either.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
You're not entitled to vote based on whatever. You're entitled to vote for things that are okay, fine.
But yeah, no, that's the thing, right? There is no pushback on these types of people. Like, we don't. Zohar Mamdani is another example. We don't attack these people we like them. Now, we might attack the extremists in the media. We might whatever, but right.
Well, that's because that people have to the problem is that it's entirely about, like, you have to, like, balance the whole thing, you know, where you're like, okay, which ones, like, in terms of Graham Plattner, for example, people in Maine are going to have to look at Graham Plattner when he, as, like, the nominee, which at this point I believe, like, he is the nominee, basically, because Janet Mills dropped out, and I don't know that there was anybody else there, but, like, people are going to be looking at him and they're going to say, okay, well, it's him or the Republican. It's like a fucking binary choice, and I have to pick one, and obviously I'm going to sit here and I'm going to say
he won the primary, so it wasn't a binary choice, first of all.
What?
He won the primary. So it wasn't.
No, yeah, but in the general election, it is a binary choice. It's either him or the Republican.
I understand what you're saying. That's in a general vote. I'm just saying, in terms of primaries.
Yeah, right? But I'm not talking about primaries.
Even in generals, though, you can make the same point. The Jewish issues, and Asian issues and whatever other group you want to insert is never a priority, right? And that's okay. If you don't want to make it a priority, they're just going to vote for other people.
I know, but that's the thing though, right? Is that like when you are literally choosing between the Democrat or the crazy, fucking fascist
it was a primary.
mega
but
party.
but there's a primary.
I know, but I'm talking about after the primary is over because your vote's not the only one.
I understand, but that ignores the fact that you get to choose who the primary candidate is as the Democratic Party.
Yes, that's correct. You do, but like, not everybody, like, people are going to vote based on X, Y, or Z. For example, with Janet Mills, perhaps one of the reasons why she didn't get the support is because she's old as fuck and people didn't perceive her
I'm not saying,
as, like,
I'm not saying,
I don't think people,
I'm not saying
like,
people are voting because they hate
her.
Jews, although some of them are. But I'm not claiming that. I'm saying Jewish interests are not, no one cares, right? If we were talking about trans issues, right? I said I was pro-trans rights, and everyone in your chat is like, oh my God, the Democratic Party can't move off trans rights, blah, blah, blah. This is a deadlock issue because they care about that issue. When it comes to Jewish issue, they're like, well, this person who literally called Jewish civil rights right replacement theory, she's generally positive. That's their impression, right? So it's not an important issue to them. That's the truth. So there's no reason to appeal to these people.
I just, hold on. I just want to say it was an important issue to the voters in that district in Illinois, which included at least some number of Jewish people. And that's why she lost.
Oh, no, I can understand that. I'm just saying, you said, why am I not appealing to the far left space? I was justifying that.
No,
right?
no, that wasn't really what I was. I guess I was just saying, like, what, I don't know.
Well, way earlier. People have different priorities. I understand that. I'm not shaming people who disagree with me. I've never called you bad if you vote for this person. I've never done any of that. I'm just saying, if you're not considering these interests, why would they go to your party? Why not go to a Republican? Right? Like, that's the thing.
Yeah,
and you can say, oh, Republicans are bad for X, Y, Z, but if they care about this issue and you don't care, they're not going to vote for you. Right?
Yeah, I know.
So what you can do.
Also,
that's why I think. Hold on. Let me just say that's why I think that, like, there is, like, I think that was something that mattered to Kamala Harris, by the way, and that's probably part of the reason why she wasn't going to take the maximalist position, because Jewish people are in fact a reliable voting bloc for the Democratic Party right now, but they might not be if you keep going fucking crazy and continuously appealing to all these insane losers like the Hassan wing of the party and shit. Although, I mean, Hassan's not really a wing of the party, but you know what I mean?
Well,
and, like, I'm sure that probably mattered to her.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I
kind of thought she was
stuff, but yeah.
I kind of thought it was like a big cowardice problem. Like, she couldn't take a stance on anything, to be real. But that's a separate issue. It is an important thing to consider. And the thing is, the Democratic Party right now is only attacking Jews. There's two positions within the Democratic Party. There's, we hate Jews and we're going to attack them, and we don't care about this issue. And when you get that situation, Jews are going to leave. And not necessarily, Jews don't necessarily only vote on Jewish interests, but we are constantly under attack. We are constantly whatever. It's only going to get more and more important for Jewish people. And Asian people, like I said, got their rights back by going Republican or going independent, at least, right? They didn't do it through the Democrats, right? They fought against the Biden administration for their rights, right? And that's something we have to acknowledge. We can't just pretend, like, why don't you appeal to me as well? Like, why is it a one-way street where I have to appeal to the far left? Why doesn't the far left appeal to me? Why doesn't this comment, you know what I'm saying? And now this is a community. It's not a political thing. But,
I mean, I think that listen, I don't care about the far left, or rather, I mean, I do in so much as that
we are the far left. I am the far left in real life terms. If we're talking about socialists, it's a different thing.
Yeah, I know. When I say far left, I mean socialists. I mean, I guess, I don't know. Honestly, I wish that, like, you know what I should do? I should get ChatGPT to gather me a whole bunch of polls to find out what the average American believes about various issues, and then I should get it to make me a quiz that asks me questions so that it can stick me on the political spectrum to find out where I actually sit relative to the average American. That would be a good, that might be an interesting test to do. Yeah.
I think from my perspective, I think you are farther left than I am, and I think I'm already far left, very, very far left. But in the online perspective, we are like hardcore centrists, for 100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
probably.
That's just because the discourse is so fucked.
But
yeah. Go, Arthur.
There isn't that much need to do this kind of a label and political coordinate.
I know there's not, but I feel like it would be useful for me to learn exactly where because like Epic told me, for example, that like I'm basically pro open borders because my stance on immigration is that like I'm in favor of amnesty, and then after you do the amnesty, you close the loopholes to make it so that nobody in the future can come in illegally because you've made it easier for people to immigrate without having to wait like 10 fucking years. Right.
I mostly agree with you, but I self-identify as far left because of that, right? Like, it's not like your average American does not. As an American, I can tell you, even I'm in the blue area, even here, it's not popular. But
yeah,
I mean, I don't want to hold you up. So if there's anything you want to end on, and then I can leave because you said you wanted to talk to someone else. I don't want to.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, sorry, Arthur, but I think that I'm probably. Yeah, I do. I wanted to. Yeah, and by the way, Johan, if you want to come back in when MiRootsie is here to try to explain the thing more, but anyway, no, go ahead, Arthur.
All right, peace.
I was gonna throw in another example. So, John's example. God, I hate motorcycles. But anyway.
Is that what happened? Are there lots of motorcycles,
it is motorcycles
in Moscow? Is
yes.
This a
well, I'm next to the ring road, so there's a lot of vehicles of any kind.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah.
Okay.
The thing that I was going to throw in is the... so, John's attack doesn't come off as the Democrat flowchart kind of situation of blame Democrats, whatever. The same concept does happen, but isn't labeled the same way to the Republicans. Every national security-minded individual that I'm aware of is a Democrat now. The both like the hawks and the relatively like isolationist or tepid individuals, the liberal internationalists and the American exceptionalist people, all of them are in the Democratic Party because the Republicans are too fucking retarded to have a coherent foreign policy, because it has to be the thing that Trump wants, because that's how presidency works in the United States.
Yep.
And therefore, given that the NatSec people, national security, I should say, they can't get anything from the Republicans, they just went to the Democrats. This is not a concept exclusive to the Jews or to identity groups. This is just the peculiarities of aggregation of political interests in the U.S. specific context, right? And that's the thing that you should keep in mind. And you should think about it in the terms of political science as opposed to like the partisanship of the U.S. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
There you go.
Oops. Okay. Awesome.
Oh, and if MiRootsie wants to fight with...
Hi, Arthur. I don't want to fight with anyone. I wasn't trying to fight last time. I swear to God, on my father's grave, I wasn't trying to fight last time.
I understand. That's fine. I'm mostly meaning, but like, if you want to talk about Joan's position, I think I can represent it.
I think I have a different position. But go ahead, Kalinda.
I think I understand Johan's position. So MiRootsie, if you don't mind, I will explain, like, with regards to the DMs or whatever. I think that you're not, when I'm talking about this, like, the thing that Johan's talking about is like, I think it's like the evolution maybe of political correctness, but I don't think it's the same thing. He's talking about something very specific, which I had explained to you. And I guess, like, my question to you is then, if you want to recall from history, is like, was this actually a thing before? Because I think that we are thinking of two different things here. I'm talking specifically about, like, how far we went with all of this weird shit about how, like the whole "don't call me Karen" thing, and how, like, you get shouted down if you're a white woman and you try to, like, bring up the fact that you have certain experiences, or like that you also have real issues. And by the way, it used to be in the past that wasn't the case. Like, feminism obviously was like a much more part of this. But now, if you're talking about feminism, usually, at least for like this particular people and this ideology, which is what Johan's talking about when he refers to wokeness, this stuff is like, usually they're going to exclude white women, and they're only going to be talking about like black women, or like indigenous women or what have you, even though their issues are different from white women. But white women will often get marginalized because, you're white, and therefore, like, get out of here, or like your issues don't matter as much as other people's issues do. And like this whole notion of like certain rights matter more than other people or everything else, that's what he's talking about. And I'm wondering, like, but I don't know that that's the same as political correctness. Is just you can't use these certain words because it's problematic.
Okay, so what I'm getting at is that I don't think what you're explaining is specific to this point in time. It's just that our concept of what is and isn't something that needs to be included in the conversation continuously expands, right? So that same statement that you just made about white women being excluded is how white men felt when we started the feminist movement, or how white people in general felt when we started integrating. Like, the term woke being assigned to that and dying on the hill that we keep the word woke assigned to that, I think if you really want to have the conversation, then it sounds like he is more attached to attacking the word woke than addressing this underlying issue of how to feel it.
But he's not, though. He actually does want to address the underlying issue. It's just that, like, for whatever reason, I think he just wants to use that word because that, in particular, that word, or because that's currently the word that everybody is using to describe this.
But I think the actual issue that is unique to this time is that there's a performative aspect that we're forgetting about, right? That I see as being unique to internet and internet culture and the social media landscape. So before, like, when I think of woke, I don't just define it as, I don't personally define it as just this trying to like this kind of like balancing of rights. Like, I would see it something as like
the oppression Olympics stuff, and
I would see it more as a performative support of a minority issue that is unjustifiable in its exclusion of others. So the issue that we've faced in the past is that we have to, in order to, in general, expand our acceptance of all of these different groups, that does mean that the previous group of people does constrict a little bit, right? But in general, we're constantly expanding that pool. So yes, it is true that when women entered the workforce, like, it did constrict men's rights a little bit, right? Because they had more people to compete against. But what was missing back then from this conversation was the performative and unjustifiable aspect of it. So we said, like, well, it's justifiable to make men compete a little bit harder because the greater good here is served by letting women into the workforce. So like that, I think if you really want to get to the problem here, you have to address the performative part and to the unjustifiable exclusion of others. Because some of this, as a white woman, some of this is justifiable. I'm willing to be a little bit quieter because I think the overall greater good is served by more voices, right? So if that makes my voice a little bit quieter, that's fine. My voice is still in there, right? That's a constriction. That's a justifiable.
And that's a fair thing to say, but at the same time, I don't think that your reaction to, or like, obviously, I'm sure then that you would agree, though, that white women being annoyed at being called Karens when they get, like, upset or whatever, and like this weird shit with that, is not something that, like, other minority people should like point and laugh at them for. And that's like a really shitty thing to do and make someone feel really bad, care.
Okay, well, I think on an interpersonal level, that's a shitty thing to do. As someone who wants, who has like a rule utilitarian, or in general just wants a better word, something as silly and surface as calling me a Karen if I'm justifiably angry.
Well, yeah, but I just mean like in
that
any
is,
sort
like,
of instance,
I-
or you
I'm-
know.
I'm okay with that. Like, I think that's a silly hill to die on, right?
No, I know
Like,
that's just an example that I was giving. There might actually be better examples that I can't really think of right now, but I'm just saying
And
that
the
like
other thing-
yeah,
the other point I was trying to make is I think what's making this conversation difficult is that, and I said this to you in DMs, we're using examples as definitions. If I ask you to define what a fruit is and you tell me a fruit is a pear, you're not explaining to me what a fruit is. You're just saying, well, a pear is a fruit. Okay, but what's a pear? Now, if you say to me the definition of a fruit is that it's the reproductive organ of a plant, for example, a pear, then you can have that conversation. But working on like just examples alone isn't enough because
yeah, but
what's your
that's not that. Yeah, but okay, but the examples tie back to the definition, and the definition is that
yeah.
is like the basically the elevation of the rights of certain minorities above everyone else, and then the shutting down of all conversation when you attempt to question this. That's what the
Okay.
definition is, and the examples kind of like
Here's-
show that
here's
in
the other
action.
problem with that. If you,
What?
but here's the other
But
problem.
not really. That's
But-
not the definition. That's the
Yes.
manifestation, which is different.
Exactly.
I mean, well, no, that's Johann's definition of wokeness, though. He says that's what wokeness is.
No.
Johann, am I wrong? Can you explain it to me in chat? Is that not your definition?
The definition would be something to the effect of ideological assumptions that posit the rights of minorities can never be in conflict, and that
Oh,
the
okay,
minorities are
yeah.
valuable, and that this, that, and the other, right? And therefore, in public discourse, what that does, either by necessity or by happenstance of like the way discourse developed in the United States and like the Anglophile world more generally, is that you can no longer speak about the relatively less oppressed minorities, quote unquote, even if in truth the oppression either was miscalculated when that decision was like collectively at the discourse level made, or that the situation changed and the oppression Olympics, even like internal logic of wokeness, would still dictate that Jewish rights, for example, are more important than whatever it may be, right? That ideological rigidity, I guess, would be the problem with wokeness, as I understand Joan's point.
Yeah, I think that Arthur's right, but I also said values can never conflict with minority rights. Okay, yeah, well, I said everything else basically, like that, like nothing can conflict with, or like you are elevating the rights of certain minorities above everything, values, others rights, everything, and there can be no confliction allowed because that's just, you know, like that's just not, you can't, that's not allowed, basically, is the general gist of, yeah.
And I on the surface just disagree that is the reality on the ground. It might be the reality in online that's why I keep pushing the performative aspect of this. It might be
Johann would tell you that that's not true, though, and like, I mean, to a certain extent it does seem like that is the case, and then like that's why the examples are important. And I know you don't like the trans woman in sports example, although I do feel like that is a really good example, but that's not one example.
That is one example. I feel like it's a disingenuous. I will always feel like that's a disingenuous example, but
yeah, but it's not a disingenuous example for some people who do care about it. Like Epic, like did mention people actually caring about it, like at universities and stuff.
Yes, and in micro interactions, I'm sure people care. But in general, I think that is just as performative as the people saying that all trans women should be allowed, right? Regardless of actual physical capability. Like, I think they're both performative. And the performative aspect of this is what's causing the issue. And it's fantastic that Johann thinks or feels that that's what's going on the ground, right? But we're all just speaking from our subjective experiences. I think that's another reason why it's hard to listen to Johann on this. No offense, Johann, you and I obviously disagree, but he does a lot of maximalist, the American people think this is definitely happening, yada, yada, yada. But we haven't really seen any evidence of that. The American people care about the economy. Like, that's basically it. Like, that's number one, right? Like, they might be annoyed by this, but this isn't driving their political party platforms. This isn't driving their voting choices. None of that is laid out in the data that we've seen post 2024, right? Like, we asked, and they said it was the economy. But it definitely wasn't trans women in sports. I don't even know if it was the top 10.
Well, if that's your conception of people in the voting population seeing a set of issues presented to them and then voting in what's a good way to describe it, super rationally from first principles, I suppose, then you would be correct, maybe. At least you sound like it to me in the moment. But that is not the way reality works.
Okay,
and I know I'm asserting like the way reality works right now, but still, the
I
role
feel like
of trans women in discourse is important, and it drives the Republican Party, and therefore, kind of in an outward sense, it reinforces the Republican identity, and the people who have that identity have an easier time appealing to people. No?
I disagree that it drives either of the parties. It might drive the performative online people. But
and that's the important part, because the performance of the identity as a Republican or Democrat is
driving them
matters,
in the voting.
no?
That's not what's driving them in the voting. Both left and right, economy was at the top, right? The economy. This, so to me, the obsession with addressing that, like, yes, it's a good conversation to have. Yes, we should be able to discuss these things. Like, I don't disagree that we should have this conversation. I disagree that we should have this conversation in a maximalist way and give this bigger legs than what we're seeing, like, in the political reality of things, right?
So
okay. Sorry,
I'm
can
gonna explain what I mean in a different way.
Epic is here now, but like I do think that so at this point now what's happening is we are having like I guess an empirical disagreement, and I feel like if you want or like if people like we can start pulling out the polling
we're currently
data.
having an interpretation disagreement.
Well, yeah, I think there's also a when we say this is only online, I'm sorry, MiRootsie, you're just wrong, like really wrong. It's only at the state level is the reality. The problem is, MiRootsie, if you live in one of these states, this is your reality. If you live in California, or if you live in Oregon, or if you live in Washington, these aren't just people online. These are like the people that represent you in your state legislature. And that is your reality if you live there. And this describes about 1 in 3 Americans that live in places like this. So for myself and others that actually live like on these West Coast cities, these aren't just online people, these are our mayors, right? And they do actually have real power, not just online performative cultural power. Okay, and this actually has led to like Democrats losing seats in LA, and like the polling on this is because the Democratic Party is too woke. Yes, that is real.
Okay, but you're still extrapolating it past where it belongs. Like, at least, I don't know about you, but from what I heard, what it sounded like, how Johan was talking about it, he was extrapolating it across the country. And this is just not, where I believe it is definitely an issue in California. It is not like the two main states that I reside in, Michigan and Maryland, Maryland being fairly far left, right? This is just not, it's not a thing.
It's not an East Coast thing, it's a West Coast thing. I understand, but what Johan's talking about is quite frankly what you're doing, which I also find very frustrating, which is when people yeah, but when there's people like me that live in these West Coast cities, and we point out this issue and say, wow, this is destroying our local environment. This is destroying the city I live in, the place I really like my real life. It's not my online world. It's when I go outside. And then you have people from the East Coast like yourself, aren't they? They're saying, oh, don't worry, it's not a big deal. It's only online. It is a big deal if you do live here.
Okay,
right?
One, I'm not saying don't worry. And two, I'm saying what is online is the performative aspect of this, right? So
yes,
where I'm looking at,
I agree.
What I'm looking at is performative and unjustifiable exclusion. And I'm trying to take how you guys were defining it in terms of like just the balancing of minority rights and separate that out as a separate thing, because that balancing of minority rights has been under a different term for each new generation, right? That's always a thing that's been with us. It's always a thing that's going to be with us. We have always figured it out before, right? It's a delicate balance. It's a
But the
push and pull.
problem,
But we can't figure it out right now because you can't have the conversation because everyone shuts it down. Because people like you that don't live here say it's not really happening. And then people that do live here that are part of the woke problem will say you're a bigot for bringing it up. And it's created a situation where a lot of Democratic voters in these blue cities on the West Coast are just not voting. And when you ask them why, 80% of them are saying because the party is too woke. That's like, there is data for that. And it is a problem. And you see districts in LA flip red as part of the reason the Republicans took the House back.
But again, I'm not saying it's not happening. I'm saying it's not happening to the extent that is being portrayed in this particular conversation. It is something, like I said, we need to address it, and we should be able to have that conversation, right? As a member of the group that is on the constricting end of this right now, you know, straight white woman, like I understand it is frustrating, right? It has happened to me, but this is also something that I think the people in your position that do live in those places, Epic, like if you go too overboard with making this into something bigger than it is, you're going to cause that same kind of like flip red, right? Like you're also going to shut this conversation down. So
I agree, but what I'm saying is you're inducing people to lose their minds when these issues are kind of when the constant message is these are only online problems, when to some people they're not only online. And I just got to give like a little bit of pushback on the trans sports thing. I'm sorry. I know to you this is all performative. The people that went to the University of California system where scholarships were being handed out for hundreds of thousands of dollars to people that honestly don't deserve it. It became a Title IX issue because like women were losing scholarships to people that were abusing the system. Like that is a real problem that really affects people very deeply, that people really cared about, and it wasn't all performative.
I'm not saying
that can be a real problem.
That can be, yes.
However, if it were a real problem to people as they care.
But the part that's problematic here is when our governor starts to have this conversation, because 80% of California Democrats are screaming at him to do it, the rest of the national party starts calling him transphobic. And that's an example of the woke culture. That's a perfect example. The fact that when Gavin Newsom says, okay, there's some fairness issues, we need to re-examine the sports thing, which is what people in California wanted him to do, among California Democrats, 80%, right? You have the national apparatus, you have people on the East Coast who don't understand these problems saying Newsom's a transphobe. Why is Newsom talking about trans sports? Why is this such a big deal? He should just shut the fuck up. But he did need to address it. It was a big deal for the state he's governor of.
Arthur.
The point MiRootsie was making is that the people that claim to care about Title IX or fairness issues, had they applied that framework consistently, would find many other things
you don't
that
know
they
these people.
Hold on.
They do.
Hold on.
You're talking about progressives on.
I'm explaining.
They do. You're talking about progressives on the West Coast that apply this. Yes.
Hold on, can I just say something? I just want to say, hold on a second. I think the problem here, I think that there's a disconnect. The reason why MiRootsie might be saying this, and the reason why Arthur might be saying this, is because when they think about this, is because their primary exposure to the trans sports shit is coming from like people like Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh who are bitching and crying and whining about it.
Yes, that's the problem. You guys only interact with this performatively. For me, it's real life. It's not online games.
Yeah.
So it's a little annoying when people who don't interact with this problem in real life are telling us, who do, that, oh, it's not a really big problem. And it radicalizes people. It pushes people to the right. It is a problem.
I
understand what you're saying, but
fair.
To push back, I didn't say anything. I'm just explaining.
Okay, Arthur,
I'm
sorry.
Hold no position.
Look, I don't have any problem with anybody in this call. I love you all. I'm talking about the ideas. I think, and I know people in my life who have been pushed out of the Democratic Party because when they are concerned about certain things that are happening, they basically get shut the fuck down, whether it's in real life or online or on college campuses.
Let me pick your brain, Epic. If this was 20 years ago, and instead of white women, or not white women, just women in general, and trans women in their sports and Title IX issues, say that this is something to do with, I don't know, gay rights 20 years ago, right? Like,
Yeah.
At a certain point in time, somebody has to give and say, yes, while this is an issue, I'm willing to take this half step back so we can take 2 steps forward.
Yes.
My position is, or like I said before, like women in the workplace and men, or integration between the races, like somebody has always had to take a justifiable half step back so that the entire country can take 2 steps forward. I feel like that's where we are right now. I'm not saying that this issue doesn't exist. I'm saying that it is harder to convince people to take that half step back when both sides are like, when people are screaming that, no, this is a national issue, when it's a local issue, or the other side is screaming like this is the end of women's sports, even though we don't actually care about women's sports. Like, instead of being like,
okay, stop saying that. The student activist groups who brought this up in the California Democratic Party, who made this a conversation that led to Newsom talking about it, are literally student sports unions. Yes, they care about women's sports. They're women's in sports. That's who made this issue.
I'm trying
the women who play the sport.
Past California onto the national stage, because as an entire country, this is what we have to do. We cannot.
I think I know where the disconnect is.
Where do you think the disconnect is?
This shouldn't be a national conversation. You're right. What should happen is we need a candidate who's willing to say, yeah, maybe Newsom had a few points when he stepped back there. Maybe if I were addressing this at the federal level, I'd be more careful. And then it wouldn't be a national conversation. But our last candidate, Harris, refused to make these statements because, as Johan would say, she was kind of woke. She was afraid to kind of give that pushback. And because she was, the people that live in places like where I live were kind of afraid that she was going to bring this to the national level. And that's what was kind of radicalizing. And it would be, if we had another candidate who could literally just say, there's a few areas where maybe we went too far, we'll do better, that would silence all of these concerns. It shouldn't be a national conversation. I agree.
Yeah, okay. I actually, that would be nice. Also, I just want to say that, like, I think that, like, that's probably the appropriate response when Republicans try to make it. Like, just say, this is a states issue. Yes. Let's let the states decide on this.
Yes. Democrats refusing to shut it down is part of the issue that we're calling woke. That have certain Democrats who are afraid to challenge the 1% of their party that lives in UC Berkeley. Like, it's turning off a majority of normal voters to appeal to a small minority of very young activists who generally don't even vote. That's the problem that's national. To me, the problem that's national isn't like woke policies, it's the discourse.
Okay. Well,
yeah, but I like,
Johan might disagree with you there, but I think that might be an interesting conversation.
Well, like I said, I probably disagree with him on a number of things, but at least, I couldn't agree more.
The reason I push back on the women's sports thing is because Title IX can be dangerously misused, right? Like, it was to ensure like women's access, like gender equality and education.
And, and women were losing access to education scholarships in California. That was happening.
Yes, but not to an like. To me,
it became a really big problem. Yes, very quickly.
I'm gonna
within a year of the policy change.
And say that the goal. I'm going to mind read you and explain your position while you're thinking about it.
Okay.
I think the idea that you're going to present is going to be that Title IX itself is based on the attempt to integrate more groups into society by ensuring a really, although not explicitly, temporary, like, protections to bring up society to a level where they can compete on a non-protected grounds, as it were. And now the time has passed for women, and there's another group in town that needs those protections. And as such, Title IX being applied in a, quote, conceptually correct, if not legally correct way, would be to extend those protections to trans
That's a
people, whatever it
ridiculous
might be.
statement, though, right? Because women's biology is the factor here, not like women's education. We're
Yeah,
talking about,
that's
again, just to be
true.
super clear, we're not talking about private sports. Those aren't regulated by the state government here. We're talking about the University of California system, college sports, where scholarships worth hundreds of thousands of dollars are handed out.
But also,
And
so this is the other issue.
Hold on,
This conversation is that.
Well, I'll just say, like, the same people who sued over this also sued over the same group that sued over the trans sports thing, also sued over the Asian enrollment issue and brought that to the Supreme Court. They also sued over other Title IX issues in California. So this idea that they're just like picking out trans stuff, no, like these people were concerned broadly with a kind of culture that was coming on our campuses where we were doing things in a way that was causing like real systemic disadvantage to different groups, whether it be Asian American students, or be female athletes.
What I'm saying is that those real systemic damages, we should be passing legislation to address those, right?
I agree, but the problem is to pass that legislation, you need to have the out calling everyone, trying to start the conversation.
I didn't hear the last 5 seconds. You're roboting. I'm not hearing you.
Okay. And I agree with what you're saying, but in order to have that legislation brought forward, we need to have a conversation about it that is down with nobody cares about sports.
Yes, which is why I
actually have the conversation.
Okay, that's why I don't want this to be a trans sport, because this is about the woke. Like, this is what I was trying to say about like the fruit and the pear thing. This is like trying to use the definition of to try to use a pear to address an issue that's being caused by fruit. Like,
yeah, but that's
this is
just one example, though, right?
Like, this is one example of many. This just happens to be the example that became the biggest conversation in our politics here. It just was the most divisive. When it came to the Asian thing, generally, once the Supreme Court decided that it was discriminatory to require Asian Americans to have a higher score to get into the same school, most people kind of just agreed with that ruling. With the thing with sports, we don't have a Supreme Court ruling, so that's still more of an open debate. Yeah.
Fuck, you're roboting again. Something about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, he said the Supreme Court hasn't.
With the sports thing, we don't have a Supreme Court ruling. Yeah.
Yeah.
Final. Like the other issue when it comes to enrollment, that's already over. We just
and
passed.
I think the court made the right decision there, right? Which speaks to like, there's a dance here about not also going hyperbolic in the opposite direction. Like, I see why you don't want to be hyperbolic in the direction of like what you're defining as woke, right? I also don't like, I'm using that same logic to not want to go hyperbolic in the other direction. Like, all of these have to be like more nuanced. Sounds like a trite internet whatever, like more nuanced, right? So like, to at least to me, to my audience, it's frustrating to hear this being spoke about in such a generalized, like broad manner, because it does very much feel, right? If you're really wanting to have this conversation, you are very much like shutting the ears of people that need to hear it the most, right? Like the people in the MAGA right, I don't care about that.
So that's why,
right? Like,
can you elaborate on how that?
Yeah, to be clear, this is why I don't fully agree with Johan on things, including how he defines some of these things. But what I would say is, I think most Americans, at least in my experience, on the like West Coast where this is kind of an issue, if I go to my group of like non-political friends, like independent people who don't really know much about politics, and I say like, what do you think woke means? They'll say like, woke is when I'm in an office space and I'm afraid to say something that I think is true because somebody might call me a bigot. That's kind of like the general vibe. Now, I wouldn't use that as a definition, but that's just like the general.
And some of that vibe, some of that is just bullets we have to bite if you want to have this conversation. Like, I hate to say it, but like, yeah, you might have to get called a bigot if you really want to have this conversation. And then explain to them, and maybe change one or two people, explain to them where you're coming from, and maybe one or two of those people no longer think you're a bigot. But like, some of this, and I'm not saying this to come across as a bitch, okay? I'm just gonna say it because it's the only way I know how to describe it. Some of this is coming off as like a very fragile whining. Like I said, I'm okay being called a Karen sometimes. Like, that's no skin off my back. If that's the price I have to pay to have a conversation or to explain that, hey, every time a white woman complains about something, it's not unjustified and they're not being a Karen, is being called a Karen, like, I can put up with that. Like, that's an okay thing.
But I can put up with that. I can put up with that too. What I'm saying is the average voter won't and will vote against the Democratic Party. So if we can't change that culture, we're just going to lose elections.
But that I disagree with, because this is the issue that I think has been happening for generations, and they're not losing the party, right? Like,
okay, if you think this issue has been happening for generations, we are talking about very different things.
What I'm talking
about is unique the last 5 years.
The issue in terms of like people having to suck it up and deal with like the arc of progress expanding, or the range of progress expanding to the expense of like maybe.
That's not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about regressive people who are sexist and racist and using like progressive politics as a shield. We're talking about like people who kind of hate white people that like run for office and become our mayor this year, like who literally will say things like they kind of hate white people. And then we'll have curriculum where you can't be racist. When I was in high school, I was sat down by my sociology teacher and told that it is impossible to be racist to a white person. Now, for me, that was just kind of weird. But for some of my friends, that was the first inch of them becoming a Republican.
Yeah, but that's but that's a little bit of the hyperbole, right? Like, I don't see.
But that's a real thing that happened. None of that's hyperbole. That's real.
Also,
all of these are real.
I'm gonna throw a bomb. Hold on.
Wait, no, hold on. I just want to say something before you do that, because I don't want to like turn the conversation into a place. Listen, Epic, what you just said a minute ago was, I thought, like, interesting, because you basically were saying something about how wokeness, or like a lot of your Republican friends will basically define wokeness as
every single person I know.
Okay, me not having, or me worrying about getting called a bigot if I say the wrong thing or ask a question in an office environment or whatever. That sounds like yeah, but like, is that
like
not
if there's
also
a new trans employee? I don't know what their gender is. I asked them what gender do I identify as, and now I'm getting fired for transphobia.
Hold on, wait. Is that would you not also define that as political correctness? Because I feel like maybe that might be what MiRootsie is getting at. Because political correctness was this whole, you're not allowed to say that because that's offensive and you're a bigot.
No. The difference is political correctness is this thing that's been around for decades, and it can be annoying. The woke, that's not what people are talking about.
Okay,
that's not it.
What are they talking about then? Because I'd like to know. If,
I feel like I'm having the same frustration as Johan. I'm describing to you what you're talking about, and they're arguing like, "Oh, that's hyperbolic." No, this is real.
No. I agree with you that this is reality. The reason why I'm saying is that MiRootsie was saying that, or like she thought that we were talking about the same thing, because you just talked about like people not getting offended by something.
I'm talking about this like totalitarian culture, where if you're in a university class in University of California system, and you have like, you're just generally ignorant, like you just don't know much about this thing, and you ask honest questions, if those questions can sound even 1% like it's coming from a bigoted place, people will immediately block you as a conservative Republican, transphobe, racist, anti-gay, and you'll get kicked out of your university for asking a question. And then that person is going to be radicalized.
That's also how I would define political correctness in the 90s. Is it more expanded now? Yes, because as I said, the field of progress and acceptance of what we're willing to accept and talk about and want to bring into the fold is consistently expanding with time, right? But this
is shrinking now. That's the problem. It's shrinking. It's less. The progress is going away.
In some ways, that's the half step back I was talking about. Right?
No. You
the field of subjects that political correctness concerns is expanding, while the acceptable discourse per subject is shrinking a little bit.
Yes, you are not understanding the extent to how totalitarian it's gone. That's the problem. You're thinking
now, but again, we're back to the hyperbole. This is, you just admitted this was a local. This is a local issue. It might be totalitarian.
Okay, MiRootsie. How many Americans live in?
Epic. Okay, Arthur, go ahead.
You are not taking what I'm saying at face value. So I don't know if we can have this conversation anymore. But I need you to.
These individual instances. These are
how
still.
Many people live in?
No, it's not.
No, MiRootsie, they're not.
Oh my God.
You need to listen.
I am listening.
How many people live in California? What's the population?
I can't finish a sentence. I am listening.
Well, you're not taking anything I'm saying seriously. You're actively
taking everything you're saying. I'm saying I am saying to you, I understand that this is occurring in places at specific points in time. What I'm saying
not specific. This is state policy for 40 million people, which is a lot more people than live in any other state in the union. This is the policy that about half of Americans live under. It's not some local thing in one city on the West Coast. It's a thing that, overall,
okay,
experience coming from the state they live in, at the state.
I'm sorry. It's not. That's not borne in the data, Epic. Like, yes, it might be a problem.
So this is what I'm talking about.
California, but
serious.
if you're trying to take this hardcore stance that this is a horrible fucking thing that's happening and going to destroy the Democratic
Party. It is borne out in the data. It literally is borne out in the data.
Something that shows that it's actually affecting the Democratic Party. Right now, a handful of analogies.
I was going to throw a bomb, but this is not relevant.
In California, but all of the polling data shows that this is not the issue that is killing the Democratic Party.
No, it doesn't. You're wrong. You're just denying reality.
I'm not denying reality. The thing that is killing the Democratic Party is the fucking economy. It's our economy. It's our economy. It's not woke. It's not trans women. It's not what's happening in a California classroom.
We have data on this. You're denying. So that's the problem.
I'm sure you have some data on this. You do not have data that shows that this is the issue that's killing the Democrats' chances. That data doesn't exist.
It's the number two. Yes, it does. Number two issue behind economics is wokeness. 66% of national Democrats think the party is too woke. The reason, when you ask why the Democratic Party is unpopular among Democratic voters, the two big things are inflation and wokeness. Yes, if you look at the political damage that was done in
you're looking at.
What studies are you talking about with economics? You understand that they usually list the top three. What's the second?
Here, let me get it.
And while you do, I'm going to explain how whatever poll you're going to present already baked in has a slight bit of a issue, and that you can't get around it with pretty headline polling, even from respectable places like Pew Research Center. Here's the problem.
We understand how elections work, right? You have to win states, right? We have an electoral college. So if you disenfranchise a bunch of people in a number of states, we understand that that's an electoral problem, right? It doesn't have to happen in states the electoral problem.
Even if people say that the economy is an issue to them, the perception of what would help the economy and what a good economy is dependent, at least in part, and in the US, from my perspective, from my perception, it is a high part, their political, partisan identity. And therefore, if you're being radicalized by one issue to change or form your political identity as a Republican, you would perceive the same set of macroeconomic and microeconomic data or realities on the ground as either good or bad, depending on the Republican priorities. And so, yes, wokeness can turn you Republican. A Republican can turn you to see the same set of macroecon data as bad. And therefore, you would vote on econ from your point of view, but that point of view being Republican. Does that make sense?
Also, like I put in the side chat, 45% of Democrats want the party to move away from terminally woke positions. Of 11 points since 2021. Yes, there is data on this. Is it the number one issue? No. Okay, well, the one I linked is 45. Honestly, even if it was 20%, I'd say that's enough for this to be a big conversation. So if you want to take 36%, sure. My recollection is it's as high as 66%. I'm sure if we dig into the numbers, we'd find it somewhere around there. But I'll take 36% at face value, right? Do you agree 1 in 3 Democrats thinking this is kind of a problem?
I'm thinking about it doesn't necessarily translate to it being an actual problem on the ground, right? It doesn't, just because they think something, right, doesn't mean that's how they're voting. If you ask them,
but you understand we live in a federal republic, right?
But the question is, what do they vote on? This is not what they're voting on. This is it's just not. They might dislike it. I can say I dislike a lot of things.
That vote based on one issue.
when I go into the ballot box, the things that I dislike, like, are ranked in my head, right? So I can dislike the shit, but if I like something more, that's how I'm going to vote, right? Or if I dislike the other side more, that's how I'm going to vote. So somebody not liking this doesn't necessarily translate to the political reality we see on the ground.
Okay. That's insane, but I don't even know how to deal with that.
Yeah,
If you think there's
brains work, like you can. If
no,
I give
it's
you the
not.
choice
No,
between-
it's
if I
it's
give
not.
you the choice
It's
between if you really hate tangerines, right? And one side is like, well, I'll make you.
Yeah,
eat
I
a
understand
quarter
what you're saying.
tangerine. The other
Explaining
side
it
is like,
more
I'll make you eat the
make me think
entire
it's even
tangerine. Like you're gonna vote for the side that makes you eat the quarter one, even if you like tangerine.
This is just something you're declaring. You can't actually determine what the sole factor someone voted on. You can just poll how big of an issue was this, how big of an issue was that. Wokeness is a big issue with a lot of Democratic voters. You don't have the tools, and neither does any other pollster or anyone on this planet, to say, this is the decisive reason this person voted X or Y. All you can really do is say, what are the big concerns among voters? That's just a fact. You can't just determine the economy was the #1 concern, so every single person voted just on the economy. You can't do that. That's not how.
We do have that data. It's immigration, it's economy and immigration. I'm putting it in the side chat. In 2024, Pew Research, the economy and immigration. That's what drove shit.
Okay. So now we're talking about 2024, which is a completely different conversation. I'm talking about today. I don't even know if wokeness was anywhere near the same level.
This is the last time we had a national election. We're trying to have this conversation on a national level, right?
We're not having a conversation because you're not engaging with a fucking thing.
No, I'm disagreeing with you, Epic. There's a difference between disagreeing and not engaging and not listening. People can disagree. People can hear what you're saying and still disagree with you.
We're not even talking about the same thing right now. So, because I'm talking about right now, today, the Democratic Party. There's a big
national election we had was in 2024. So that's the data that I'm going.
2 years ago. Yeah. Yes. So there's been cultural shifts in 2 years. The country has moved to the right. Right.
Okay. But I'm sorry, like, we don't know that because, like you said, we don't have the data. The last time we had a national election,
no, we do know that. Oh my God, you aren't. You aren't even.
There is national data.
No, that's not what I said. What I said is data on what the big issues are for people doesn't tell you definitively which balance of that led to their voting, which is just a fact. If you think otherwise, I think you're fucking delusional, and I don't think it's worth having this.
Okay, I'm also putting the poll inside chat or in.
I saw the poll. The poll doesn't. The poll is not telling you the voted this way because of this balance of reasons. It's just telling you these.
Right.
You have no idea how each voter weighed those concerns. Wait, hold on. Yes, if you poll me right now,
they weighted in a way that the economy came out on top.
Stop talking over each other. Shut up, both of you.
Shut up. You still aren't engaging with the fucking point.
I am engaging. You're not engaging. What that poll shows is that they did weigh a bunch of things, and what came out on top when they pulled the ballot box.
Positions. What are the theses you're defending?
MiRootsie, what am I saying? Can you tell me what I'm saying right now that you're arguing against?
All right, you're both server muted. Fucking stop talking over each other. Jesus Christ. Nobody can hear you. Stop. You're fucking annoying me. I'm trying to please stop screaming. Okay, you are now server unmuted. MiRootsie, I'm not sure that you're understanding entirely what it is that Epic is trying to say. But
please explain what Epic is saying. So because I think I'm understanding what Epic is saying. I'm disagreeing. What Epic is saying.
What am I saying?
Is that
tell me what I'm saying that you're disagreeing with.
Also, can we all try to calm down a little bit, please?
Oh my God. I love that I'm always accused of interrupting people. Okay, what I think Epic is trying to say is that we don't know how people weighed all of these different factors when they went into the poll. Doesn't show how each individual in the ballot box weighed those individual factors when they went into the ballot box. My point is we don't necessarily need to know that, because we do know that however they weighed those individual factors, the economy came out on top. Supreme Court justices came out on top. All of those other different things in that poll came out on top, above wokeness. Now, the reason I'm going back to 2024 is because I'm trying to have this conversation at a national level. Because yes, while it's important to have at a local level, I don't think this conversation was supposed to be about a local level. If it was, then why am I here? I don't live in California.
Okay, so I don't think you really got what I was saying, but I don't know what to do at this point. I can only repeat myself so many times. I think it's better we move on to a different area.
Epic, can you try again? And MiRootsie, can you not interrupt him? And then maybe...
Okay, so...
But for the record,
if you pull me, what is...
No, stop!
Because I feel like no one has been more interrupted. Like, no one does more interrupting than Epic. So, yeah,
that's not... I mean, you... I feel like
I'm being painted as the bad guy in all of these combos when I'm not the most interruptive and I'm not the most interrupty, okay?
I don't think that you're the bad guy. I think you're both very aggressive, but anyway, which is fine. Whatever, it's good content. But
so,
yeah, I'm just...
If Gallup polled me on what my biggest concern was when I was going to vote, it would be national security. National security plays zero role in how I actually voted in the last election. Like, literally zero. I think both the candidates were fucking terrible on it. I think, honestly, Trump is slightly less terrible in some ways than Harris would have been. But I still voted for Harris. My second biggest issue would have been border security. I think that both candidates were terrible on border security, and it played zero role in my vote. So you don't really know from the size of an issue how it affects votes. And most important to this entire topic, I'm not making the claim that wokeness was nearly the same level of a national conversation back then as it is now. So I don't know why we're talking about polling from 2 years ago. I'm talking about today, when you look at why Democrats are somehow still less popular than the Republican Party, consistently on the top 3 issues, one of them is that they're too woke. Today, in 2026.
Is it too woke or too liberal? Because I've seen the Democrats are too liberal.
These mean the same thing. These mean the same thing. We need to not be too autistic. Voters are retarded. When they say woke or left, they mean the same thing.
Yeah. I know. That's what I figured. But yeah, MiRootsie, I'm sure you've seen that poll, right? That said like 50% of Americans think Democrats are too liberal.
So this is the problem with having this conversation when 20 different people have 20 different definitions of wokeness. Being too liberal was not the conversation we were having.
Yeah, but they mean woke.
Oh my God.
They mean the same thing.
The point is that they use these semantically to refer to the same concept, MiRootsie, and we've explained the concept like 11 times. The concept is this cultural attitude that exists among certain progressives that mostly exist on the West Coast right now, but they are becoming bigger nationally. They are becoming bigger nationally, and it's this cultural attitude to shut down any conversation where there's like 2 minority groups that are kind of, their rights are at issue. And it's led to making a lot of conversations we kind of need to have being impossible and toxic. And I think there's no bigger example of this than the Israel conflict. The entire Israel conflict.
We were using before was people refusing to accept the balancing of rights, that it all had to be skewed towards the smallest minority.
Okay, MiRootsie, what is the contradiction you just saw between these 2 definitions? Can you please explain to me why you think these are contradictory?
Because what you're talking about is not limited in the scope that the other conversation was limited in, right? What you're talking about is way more generalized, which is fine. We can have that conversation, but that is not the
I'm literally saying the same thing, MiRootsie.
You're not.
These are the same thing. Yes, they are.
We are excluding people's rights or excluding people's voices in order to tailor these and only support minority rights. That is not the same thing.
Okay, you misunderstood the original definition. Kalinda didn't, which is why she doesn't see a contradiction. So maybe me and Kalinda are experiencing psychosis, or maybe you misunderstood the original definition.
Then please explain to me, because I literally wrote down.
Okay, I'll do it again. Sure. So when there's 2, so the very simple way that it was put by Johan originally, which I just expanded it with more words to be more precise, but what he's referring to is you have cases where there are conflicts between 2 minority rights groups. So one of these cases, the first one he brought up, was about policing. A lot of the Black communities don't actually want to defund the police. A lot of rich white suburban communities did want to defund the police. There was kind of a conflict between the actual rights of Black people to have kind of safe neighborhoods they can go outside and get jobs, and the interests of white people in suburbs that wanted to like do virtue signaling. And this led to policies being passed that damaged these black communities, and it actually undermined these minority groups.
That's an example, but that is not the
that was his first example. His second example was transports, and his third example, I think we talked about the schooling thing with Asian students. These are all the same core issue, which is there's a minority rights issue.
You just had a brain fart. I was reading chat.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kalinda.
No, well, I'm just, okay, never mind. Like, if you, like, do you understand, like, the thing that, like, we are referring to here? Because, yeah, I think all these things, you know,
demonstrated that I understood what you guys are saying. I think that you guys are mistaking me disagreeing with me not understanding. I understand that you think that wokeness is this position that we are constricting one group's rights to an unjustifiable extent in order to pander to an overly vocal minority. And that is
the shutting down of the conversations is like the part is like, at least to me, that's
is the
like
toxic part. Yes. So the best example of this is the Israel-Palestine conflict. It's such a toxic conversation because of wokeness in our Democratic Party, and it shouldn't be a toxic conversation. It should be the biggest winning issue for the Democrats. It should be an issue that we can.
How you guys are also talking about it is also shutting down the conversation, right?
About
like
what?
when
Israel?
You're insisting on California being like this hardcore example, when you're not understanding, like I see you not moving at all on the fact that like that is a local issue to California, but the rest of the Democratic Party is not ready to hear you push back so hard on it because the rest of the country does not face that issue. Right?
Okay,
like,
so
this is a compromise that everyone across the country has to make. Yes, we need to listen a little bit more to California, but you guys also need to listen a little bit more to everyone else in the country when we're saying we understand that this is frustrating you, but this is not an issue that we're facing day to day in our lives that we think needs to be at the tip of everybody's tongue.
Okay, but you're misunderstanding our position. Nobody's saying that. The only reason these examples come up in California is in response to you, and before you, Duckbringer, denying that these problems actually exist in the real world. That's why they come up, is to say, hey, for some of us, this isn't just online virtue signaling.
What? I am
this
not
is our real
life. Epic. Never once have the words, this doesn't happen, come out of my mouth. I'm saying proportionality. No,
I'm sorry. I need to stop you there. I didn't say this doesn't happen.
Stop both of you.
Several times in this conversation earlier,
to define the disagreement you're having. What the fuck is this conversation about?
Several times in this conversation, MiRootsie, I explained to you a real thing that isn't just like a one-off. This is like normalized here. And you kind of called it hyperbolic, or in some cases you said it was exaggerating, or when I tried to explain how totalitarian it is.
The trans woman's thing is hyperbolic. Yes, I think that
so that's you denying the scale of the issue.
Hyperbolic. That it is not shown that is driving anything nationally. It just is.
So there's either one of two things happening. Either A, which I know is what's happening, you're not understanding what I'm saying, or B, you're denying the issue.
Correct.
So
who is understanding what is being said in this conversation?
I am.
No one. I just disagree.
I think Kalinda. I think no, MiRootsie. The whole reason these examples came up.
Epic, you're not understanding me.
Wait, MiRootsie,
I'm gonna fucking kill myself.
MiRootsie,
you can't listen for a minute.
MiRootsie, you can't like start screaming when he said. I understand that both of you are incredibly frustrated.
Kalinda, I love you. I have done the minority of the interrupting and the screaming here.
No, it's not that. You know what it is? It's because it like
you aren't engaging with the fucking point. No, it's really frustrating.
I'm disagreeing with the point, Epic.
No, it's not that you're disagreeing. You're mischaracterizing me again and again and again. And every time I fucking try to correct you,
you.
Oh my god!
I don't feel like I've mischaracterized you.
Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. I disagree that this is as big of a fucking deal as you think it is.
MiRootsie, you're disagreeing with things I'm not saying. So if you could stop doing that, it'd be fucking nice.
Okay, can we all just please try to take a step back and calm down? MiRootsie, I think the only reason why it comes across as you being more aggressive is because that when you talk, like, your voice is much louder than Epic's. And I don't know if this is like a microphone thing. It probably is, because he's on his phone and you're probably on like that nice shiny microphone that you bought and attached to your MacBook. And so that's probably why. Okay.
Yeah. I've
that's
been
what
counting.
I'm saying.
I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this for the 12th time. I don't think or want this to be a national conversation, and I'm not bringing up local examples to make it a national conversation, and I don't think it should be a national conversation. That is the 12th time I'm going to make that statement. Hopefully we can take it at face value this time.
But
can I ask a clarifying question then on that note? How then do we deal with this at the national level with regards to the whole, do we just say for all of these things, I think that's a state level issue? And I'm wondering what specifically, like in terms of, obviously for the trans sports thing, yes, that should be left up to the states. But like, what other things, for example, do you think shouldn't be talked about? Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not that it shouldn't be talked about. It's that the refusal to have the conversation it's the refusal to engage is making it national. So stop refusing to engage. If we get, let's say Mark Kelly is the candidate, and someone puts a mic in his face and says, do you think trans men should play in women's sports, or trans women should play in women's sports? His response, instead of fucking stuttering for 10 minutes and looking like an idiot and causing this whole national conversation, should be, you know what, I don't think this is a big deal. I think I'm going to let state governors decide this. And then the whole thing goes away. But it's the lack of spine to do that that's causing the problem.
Okay. By the way, I do agree.
By the way,
that,
I said that at the beginning of this conversation. Just to be clear. That's why I'm so frustrated about the.
No, yeah, you did about the trans sports thing specifically, but I mean, like, what about other stuff? I'm trying to think of other examples where that would be.
I think most of these issues are being fought in state capitals, and if the politicians at the federal level can just have enough of a spine to have an opinion and not like stutter and stare and like try to create the most formulated response ever to not piss off anyone, and then in the process looking like a weak candidate, that's all I'm asking for. That's all Johan's asking for. That's it. Just have a bit of a spine and be willing to maybe piss off 1% of the party.
I don't know if that's what Johan is asking for, but I'm not really sure, because I think maybe you might like.
Well,
I
if he's
think
asking
Johan,
for more, he's wrong.
Okay, well, I think Johan has said that he wants like Democrats to like go against wokeness more, but maybe
I think that's what he means when he says that, because me and Johan have talked. He considers Gavin Newsom anti-woke because Gavin Newsom is willing to say, you know what, there's a bit of an issue there, we'll look into it. That's all. That's it.
Okay.
I'm going to try to summarize what the fuck was said and the positions of the relevant sides.
Well, okay. Before you do that, like, MiRootsie, do you, like, understand then, like, I guess what the, like, it's basically, it seems like all of this, or Epic's position is that he wants Democrats to stop fucking trying to appeal to these fucking to this extremist minority weirdos who like constantly want to shut down the conversation.
I feel like when I think that would have been the right way for Kamala to handle this, right? But this conversation was about more than that. It was about, in general, how are we discussing it with each other, right? So my position has been turn down the hyperbole on both sides. And Epic, you just said it. You think this is a local issue. Okay, well then why are people coming on here and trying to extrapolate it to the national level? That's why we went down the whole rabbit hole of like who voted and why did they vote, and why did they vote how they voted, right?
Because Kamala Harris made it a national issue when she...
This conversation and the subject. Number one, the issue level. Whether or not specific individuals are capable of participating in specific activities, be that the bathrooms, be that sports, be that scholarships, whatever it is, right? Number one. Number two, there is the conversation surrounding the social agreement as to whether those people should participate in those activities. Number three, the conversation about the conversation, the meta level, wherein the contention of Joanne and Epic is that the woke assumptions manifest in society as a refusal to allow for level 2 to happen, which in turn produces weird and or bad outcomes at level 1. And the conversation is also fragmented, not only along these levels, but also along the state versus federal issue as levels of implementation, So a thing can be a state level policy, like in California, you see a system, and still be affected by or be represented in levels 2 and 3. Joan and Epic are saying that there is a level 3 problem where wokeness at a national level, that environment, is making it so the conversation that is needed to happen in the states at level 2 is not happening, and that's a problem. And therefore, in the states where this is relevant, level 1 is being retarded.
Yes, that's
good luck.
Again, this is why I bring up the example. The reason I bring up trans sports is not because I think it's a big issue. It's because it was made a big issue by the whole woke culture. And what I mean when I say that, again, Gavin Newsom, when he said to Ben Shapiro, there's a fairness issue, that should have been the end of it. But instead, there was weeks of articles by the New York Times, by the whole left-wing podcast space, about how Gavin Newsom is a transphobe. And you had politicians from as far east as New York calling Gavin Newsom a transphobe. That is toxic. It is toxic to letting Newsom correct some policy mistakes that a majority of Californians wanted to see him do. And it will drag him down, unfortunately, if he runs for president. This will come up again. He will get called a transphobe by these people. It makes the conversations toxic.
Yes, and what I'm saying...
Does any of this make sense to you, MiRootsie? Yes or no?
Yes, what I'm saying is that level 3, if you extrapolate too hard upon that level 3, the same thing is going to happen. It's going to be toxic to the party, right?
Yeah, but that's why my solution is not be anti-woke aggressively. It's just to have a bit of a spine and give some real answers. Someone asks you a question, you just give an honest answer.
Yes, and I don't disagree with that. But the way that this conversation is being presented is that you do want to go hard on that. That Johan wants to go hard on that.
I think Johan's the one who wants to go hard on that. But yeah, sorry.
At level 3, it is coming across as though you and Johan want to go hard on that at level 3. And what I'm trying to say is, if you don't go back to level 2 and go hard on that, and if you go too hard on it at level 3, when this isn't played out across the rest of the nation, you are also going to injure the Democratic Party, right? If you spend all of your time talking about this, and addressing this and figuring out how to handle this, then the issues that are driving the national party outside of California are going to fall to the wayside. And people are going to be like, why the fuck are they talking about trans women in sports when my gas is $4.50 a gallon?
Okay, so I understand.
So you're making an argument.
Why, again, my whole point is that the limitation to this, it should be a 2-second conversation. It should literally be like, Governor Newsom running for president. What do you think about the Asian stuff in college? And instead of saying what Harris would have done, I feel, which is give a non-answer, just give an actual answer that satisfies people. Just say, you know what, that was wrong. I'm glad the Supreme Court ruled the way it did. And that's it. The conversation's over. It's over. Most people will be satisfied, and the people that aren't go fuck themselves.
Yeah, and if the Republicans...
That the means to get there require a conversation, which is going to take away from other more affordability-related issues.
Yeah, but I mean, that's
simple.
The means to get there shouldn't require that conversation. That's the whole point, right? Is that the Democrats...
We are having the conversation right now.
Yeah, yes, I know.
These conversations, the extent to which we have these conversations at the national level should be proportionate to the amount of people that they are affecting and are concerned about them. So if 30% is concerned about it, 30% of our time should be spent on this. If 90% is concerned about the economy, 90% of our time should be focused on the fucking economy. What I'm saying is we are playing into Republican hands. What Republicans want to do is make this into a bigger thing than it actually is, so we take our eye off the ball, because that's what Democrats do. We fucking take our eye off the ball. And to an extent, I feel like the fact that we have been arguing about this for as long as we've been arguing about this is us taking our fucking eye off the ball, right? Of us extrapolating too far past where this is an issue at.
So this is what's been this is why I kept saying, when you kept saying you disagree, I was trying to cut you off, which, by the way, she did get interrupted way more than anyone else here, just to be clear for anyone. But the whole reason I was trying to cut you off there is to say, We don't disagree that this conversation is toxic and should be avoided. What I'm trying to say is I think the only way to avoid it is to like actually start having a little bit of a spine and be willing to give a tiny bit of pushback. Because if you don't, what happens is it becomes the only thing Republicans talk about for the entire election cycle, because they see weakness. And you saw this with Harris. You saw like a lot of attack ads created because Harris wasn't willing to answer a question about transgender people in prison. If Harris had literally given an actual answer instead of "I'll follow the law," which we both know is a non-answer, if she had like actually said like, you know what, maybe that's a silly policy. By the way, even if she doesn't think it's silly, just because that's what it seems most Democrats would want to hear, even if she had no intention of changing the law, I think that would have just ended the conversation. I don't think there would have been all these attack ads. I don't think it would have been a long media cycle. I don't think you'd have the "we are for you" and "she is for they, them." I think that our inability to do that.
I want to push back on that a little bit, because I don't think it matters what. God, I had another brain fart. I'm sorry. I'm not feeling the greatest today. So I don't think it necessarily matters how Kamala answers that question. The Republicans are always going to try to control the narrative. My issue is that we are letting them. We are letting them by...
Well, hold on.
Wait, I couldn't agree more. We're letting them by not giving an answer. You're right. Republicans will always try to control the narrative. We're also letting them by giving, like, we're also going to let them by giving an answer. So no, only if the answer's too harsh. Only if the answer's like crazy, like maybe what Johan would want. I'm just saying like a very neutral, very reasonable, just like what most mainstream Democrats would want to hear. Maybe not even what I'd want to hear, because again, I'm kind of woke. I'm a bit of wokey. Like I have very, very, very progressive feelings culturally, but just like most Americans are way to the right of me culturally. So I think our candidate could align more with the average voter than with me on some of these cultural issues. And I think, yes, there will still be attack ads, but they will be less effective, you know?
Go ahead, Kalinda.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I feel like, yeah, like by taking the bait, like imagine if Kamala Harris had been like, you know what? Yeah, I actually think that this trans sports thing should be left up to the states, and then the Republicans kept coming at her, or trying to say she was lying or whatever, and then she would have been able to go, why are Republicans obsessing over this shit when everybody, when like, when like considering the current state of our economy right now, you know?
Yes, but the thing is, you can't pivot away if you keep participating in the conversation on the other side. If they keep asking you about these things and you keep giving the most progressive answer possible, then we're going to keep fueling this debate. But if you just say like, hey, I've already given you an answer. This is a problem for Gavin Newsom and for Andy Beshear and for John Pritzker to figure out. I'm running for president of the United States. Let's focus on economics, the thing Americans care about.
So to me, what Republicans would have done if Kamala had made a tougher stance, they would have tried to paint her, because we all know that like controlled opposition happens, right? Like they would have done a bunch of Kamala hates trans people ads, right?
Okay, I couldn't agree more, but I'm telling you, those ads would have been less effective.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter either way. She would have answered. Doesn't matter to me. What I would have wanted to. But I would have wanted to see
the mindset you're falling into. If I have this mindset.
Okay.
Oh,
what I would have wanted to see Kamala do is say, hey, you know what? Maybe that's an issue for some people. Right now, I think the bigger issue here is gas prices, is affordability, is interest rates, is Supreme Court justices. Like instead, like, because if you give an answer tailored to that position, the Republicans are going to run with it either way, my dude. Like the only way to answer is to give somewhat of a non-answer by drilling back down onto the things that are more broadly applicable to people across the country.
So I think that is a dangerous and defeatist attitude. If you think the Republicans are always going to have an attack ad, so it doesn't matter. I think this attitude is like, the enemy's going to shoot at me, so why should I bother to build a trench? You're better off in a trench than standing on the open if you're getting shot at. Yes, you're still going to shoot at you. Yes, you might die. There is a risk. Yeah, sure. I think the risk of failure, I think I understand, no matter how you answer these cultural divisive questions, that you lose a certain portion of your base. What I'm trying to say is, the larger portion of the base is the one that wants the less progressive answer.
How I'm seeing this is we dig a trench, and if I run to the left Or if I run to the right, the Republicans are going to shoot me. So what I want to do is run straight down the middle at them and say,
okay, then we agree, because I'm saying just like
trying to make this about trans issues.
There have
because
been like
we all
5 times where you said we agree and then proceeded to disagree. So can I get everyone to
no, I'm
either
saying
define
we agree
what the fuck
on
is
we
happening
agree
and or
on a straight down the middle answer. That's the thing. I think a moderate kind of normal answer would be something like, this is something for states to decide. Let's focus on the real issues. And I
my
think
answer
that
would
is
be,
basically what she's saying.
why do Republicans want to make this about trans people when it's about the economy?
Okay, that's also great. But both of these are what I would call anti-woke answers. The woke answer would be trying to defend the policy that is unpopular.
Can I just say, I've literally, like, the example I literally always give when I say someone who's good on this issue is Gavin Newsom. Like, I don't know how we got into this position of, oh, I want Democrats to, I don't even know what the position being ascribed to me is. Like, I literally have never said anything like that. I don't know how this happens.
Well,
I do know because I said wokeness.
No. Can I ask you a question about that, Johan? Because that, like, I get, so is what you're saying is so are you saying then that what you want to happen, what it looks like to you, is basically at the federal level, a presidential candidate says, this is a states' rights issue. Why are we, and then if Republicans keep talking about it, then they say, why are you talking about it? That we should be talking about the economy. This is an issue that should be left to the states.
I don't necessarily,
is that what you want? And
if
then
they're dodging the question, no. But what they can say is, if you want them to say something like that, they can say something along the lines of, we're not going to do anything to deal with this issue because and they're the federal government. So there's like, no, we're not going to do this. Right. And then the states can handle it, right?
Yeah, that's
you don't
what
have
I mean.
to explicitly say the states have to handle it. But there's also a lot of issues on a local level as well, of course. Right. And at a state level as well. But yeah, I think Gavin Newsom's a great example. I never said.
Yeah, but the way Gavin Newsom is handling this as a governor would be different than how he's handling it on the federal level.
Well, he's clearly running for president, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I know, but when he's runs
already
for president,
made that shift. His governor runs, he was the woke candidate. Right.
Okay, so I'm assuming then when he runs for president, though, his answer is going to be to say that this is something, or that, like, this is not a.
Well, I think he's already in the process of running.
We've already seen him give this answer. He's already running. He already gave this answer on his podcast. Me and Johan think it was great. He said, there's a fairness issue. We're looking into it, but trans people have a right to play sports, and this is best figured out by the experts in the leagues, which is a great answer.
Yeah, I agree. That is a good answer.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's what we're talking about. That's anti-woke. That's the thing.
Oh yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying, like, is that what he should say? Is that what a presidential candidate should say, though, or should the presidential candidate say this is like an issue that we should
Gavin, he's a presidential candidate. He's running.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, for that's fine. All right, all right. Okay.
That was not the answer you'd expect from someone running for another term in Sacramento, because that is not actually. He did get some pushback locally for that, because that is a bit to the right of what some people here think. That's a more national.
Okay, position. Yeah, but the thing is that when we were
what is this conversation about?
Wait, hold on, Arthur. It's about democratic strategy and like how you deal with. Like,
is it?
Yeah, partly.
It's been an hour, and I don't think we moved anywhere on the democratic strategy.
No, I mean we have, because we're talking about what Democrats should do, because we're talking about the fact that the majority of Americans, or at least like I guess 50% of Americans polled, feel like the Democratic Party is too liberal, which basically means like they're too woke, they're too far to the left. Like all of these things come back to mean the same thing. They don't want these, like they don't want like all of this crazy, like, you know, politically correct lecturing crap about like how you can't say that, you're a bigot, and like other stuff too. Now I don't know if too liberal means other stuff in the context of the poll.
Well, you got to understand too,
while
when
all of that is true,
when the average
I don't
voter
believe
says
we covered any new ground since like the past hour.
Okay,
so while the conversation about democratic strategy is important,
I just want to, instead of having a meta conversation about the conversation,
I don't really want to have a meta conversation. I hate those.
It's a waste of oxygen. But so what Kalinda just said, you got to understand, when the average voter says something like the Democratic Party is too liberal or too woke, these are vibes. These are like cultural vibes. They're not talking about actual policy. So what I'm saying is, you don't need to change your policy platform. You just need to message in a slightly less like West Coast progressive kind of way. And I think, honestly, I really do think this, the fact that Harris was like a California progressive, I think is one of the huge reasons she wasn't able to connect with Americans, because she did have a more California progressive kind of rhetoric. And the thing is, I think you could have her exact policy platform if it's just like a white dude like Newsom that talks like a moderate, and he'd win an election, even though it's the same policies. So, yeah.
Okay, well, all right, sorry. I'm actually so specifically when you were saying the answer should be this is something that should be left to the states with regards to sports. That's something that Kamala should have said.
Avoid making yes, because that avoids that's saying we don't want to have this toxic national debate where this is the debate you can handle in Sacramento, which is the best answer, because then that leaves it up to
When Newsom is asked about it, though, you want him to say the same thing that he said to Charlie Kirk about how it's a fairness issue and like to.
Well, Newsom happens to be the governor of California.
Yeah,
so
I know,
he can't
but
say this is a problem for Governor Newsom to handle.
When he's not Governor Newsom anymore, then he should say this is something that should be left to Governor. God help us.
But you don't have to say that. You could
Governor
just
Mohan or whoever the next guy is.
To address the issue. Why do you
I can imagine in my head, in his voice, the answer, because I think he'd probably give something like that. He'd probably say something like, you know what, let's hope it's Matt Mahan. That's what I'm hoping for. He's like, you know what, I used to be governor in Sacramento. It's a tough job. Matt Mahan has that job. I wish him luck navigating these issues, but these aren't issues that I'm really worried about as president. I think that'd be a great answer. The only bad answer is when you try to defend the policy that only 5% of Americans support. Like when you get up there and you're like, no, actually, I am going to defend full integration of trans people in sports, which, by the way, is something I think they should start to play sports. You got to understand, like 5% of Americans agree with me on that. So if you're taking that position, you're taking the position like 90 to 95% of Americans think you're like kind of way to the far left on. So it's way better, even if you have that position, to just say, you know what, that's more of an issue for the states. I'm not gonna let this like toxic policy debate destroy my campaign.
Okay. Well, actually, it sounds like you don't agree with that, Johan, or like you don't agree with that.
No, I mean, I agree with it generally. I mean, we could quibble on some wording. Like you don't have to even say that. You could literally say, I'm not going to do any of this because you're not a state level person. You don't have to even address the state, right? Like, which I think is more powerful because you just you don't have the state baggage. But I did want to come in and say, like, I've not said anything very radical. I've not said whatever. And then somehow, like, I'm painted as I'm going super, super, super far. Like, what did I say that was that outrageous? Like,
we're doing a conversation about the past conversation about this.
No, I'm just
unfortunately, yes, which is
just so we're clear.
It's important to me because I think it is the issue, right? If I express these issues. If anyone expresses these issues, we get tarred as way more extreme than we are. Like it's,
and I got to say that is a real thing. Like a lot of times when I try to have these conversations with people, they will assume that like I'm coming at it from like I don't know, what's that like trans woman on the right, whatever, Blair White. Like that, like I'm coming at it from like her position, because unfortunately the online discourse, because if you don't live in these places like MiRootsie and most Americans, then you only see this stuff online, and the online conversation is as toxic as humanly possible. Like it's just the biggest retards in the country in the most extreme positions saying the dumbest things possible, and I think that makes it kind of difficult to have a more normal like analysis of this because it's already so charged.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to just entirely shortcut this entire subject. One, there are two issues. The issue that Johan and Epic are raising are that the conversation is fractured along lines that that confuses the substantive realities on the ground in places like California and potentially, I would guess, Washington, the state, not DC, but the average consumer of information, be it IRL, because this wokeness effect on the discourse has seemingly, by the claims of Johan and Epic, permeated into non-online spaces that effect has been toxic, this was allowed to happen because the people who are defending the policies are doing it in a abstracted, non-tethered way to the material connections, right? Instead of having this conversation in a UC system university meeting, we're having it online involving a Canadian streamer, a Russian, a Californian, a person in New York, and a person in Maryland, and
Washington?
some in Michigan, I believe.
Border of Washington, D.C. and Maryland.
Well, I think part of the reason for this is, at least from my perspective, there's kind of an
this
urgency.
Conversation absolutely does not need to happen. That's my point. And the fact we can't.
It does
well,
need to happen.
It does need to happen, though.
No, I couldn't disagree more, Arthur, because this culture is not.
I think he misspoke.
Can I explain?
He just misspoke. Let him clarify.
The conversation about the wokeness thing absolutely, positively doesn't need to happen. About the level 1, the actual policies. The thing we are talking about is the level 3, wherein we're talking about the conversation and the discourse kind of as a whole. And while this is important, and we have been agreeing about it for the past, 2 hours at this point? We're still, for reasons of, I would assert, and this may be offensive or it may not be, for reasons of poor communication abilities, both politically and
no, that's just not what's happening. There's no agreement here. What's happening is people say they agree, right? And this is a common thing with wokeness. But when you actually try to address the issue, they fight you on it, right? So there's a lot of issues. Like
I'm going to attribute that to a communication ability.
No, it's not. MiRootsie is talking about how some groups need to take a step back and they need to lose rights for everyone to have the same amount of rights, which is something I fundamentally disagree with. And I think a lot of these. What did you say?
I said that there is some justifiable constricting that has to happen in order to broadly advance in general.
Yeah, I just don't agree with that. So
hold on,
that is a legitimate disagreement there.
What happens, MiRootsie, if it's not advanced? What happens if the constricting is happening to not advance?
Yeah, that's what I think is what's happening.
But I don't see evidence of that happening in this generation any more than it's
happening to Jewish people and Asian people.
More than it's happened in other generations. I think that everybody in their generation thinks that it is happening to the greatest possible tragic extent because we are living in a moment. But historically, it has panned out that we have gone through this in cycles, and it has always broadly moved everyone forward.
Yeah, but
in the long term.
They're saying that's
so MiRootsie, you're very lucky to live in a bubble where this hasn't gotten there, but yes, it is kind of uniquely bad.
I can say it's personally making my life a fuck ton worse.
It's because there's a lot of technology changes in the last few decades where now
the performative aspect of it is uniquely bad. I think there is a performative aspect that is related to modern day that is uniquely bad, but the on the ground effect of it, I do not see it. Like I think we just
the on the ground effect is uniquely bad. That's the problem. I know you're isolated from it, but yes, if you are in these communities,
isolated from it, I think you're in a bubble being affected by it.
Thank you for not understanding 3 times in a row. If I can actually
real quickly, I'm going to dip
out before you.
Wait, Johan, go on.
No, I just wanted to say that real quickly. The thing where, like, the fact that I get pushed and mischaracterized is the problem. I never said anything extreme. I literally always cite Gavin Newsom as the example because I think he's doing a great job. And somehow I'm like, I don't even know what extreme thing I'm getting painted with because, like, people say I'm going to go further, but no one said specifically what I want that's further. Like, it's ridiculous. And that's the problem with the conversation.
We worried that you might want to go further.
You shouldn't, though. I haven't said anything. That's my problem.
Hold on.
Right?
Yeah, but you're saying Gavin Newsom is the model. But I'm wondering now to what, has Gavin Newsom spoken out or come out against certain other? I'm trying to think of. We would have to have a longer conversation and go through various types of policies.
Yes, he has. You guys have been thinking because you guys. Okay, but yes, it's been a big part of the political discussion for the last 3 years. Been a huge fucking problem for 40 million people. I know that some of us aren't from here, so I know it's easy to just pretend these things aren't happening or be unaware to them happening, but they are. And also, to MiRootsie,
At no other point in human history have we had the internet and cell phones. At no other point in human history has something you've said been able to carry with you to all-encompassing every part of your life. You could never escape to it without fleeing the state. At no other point in history have we had.
I agree with this.
Okay, so that's the thing that's unique right now, MiRootsie. That's the thing that's unique with that.
And that is the performative aspect of this. But that is
it's not performative to those of us that aren't only playing the game
to the extent of any more than what has happened in past generations.
You don't understand. You don't understand the problem.
No,
you don't understand the problem.
I disagree, Epic.
No.
People can understand what you're saying.
You aren't letting me explain it, MiRootsie. You're cutting me off every fucking time I try to explain what's happening. Every time I'm like 10 words in, you're cutting me off to tell me how much you understand the thing I haven't said yet because I haven't been able to.
You've said it 1,000 times, Epic.
Really? I said MiRootsie. What are the words you read from my fucking mind that I hadn't gotten out yet?
You fundamentally disagree with what is going on in the real world.
You don't even know what you're disagreeing with, MiRootsie. You're shutting down the conversation every time I try to get to the fucking point.
Can Johan say his final piece and then go, and then before you guys start screaming at each other again, which is hilarious content. Thanks for the content, but I'm gonna just say something to like maybe add a little bit more to this conversation to help you guys get past this. But go ahead, Johan, say your final piece.
Yeah, so when we talk about this mostly being local stuff, that is very, well, not local state, but it's mostly true. But there are certain conversations that need to be had about things that have national impacts. Like Asians not being able to go to elite universities was a national issue, right? So there are problems that do affect people nationally that cannot be discussed because of this woke culture, right? It's happening to Jewish people. It happened to Asian people. It'll happen to a bunch of people, and these issues need to be resolved. They're fucking horrible, and I disagree with MiRootsie. I don't think it's like an acceptable constriction. It's fucking insane, and something has to be done about these issues, but nobody can even talk about them because of the stranglehold.
You're seeing it here. You're seeing it here, the shutting down of any attempt to bring this issue up.
For the past 3 hours.
Okay, Arthur, please stop trying to make
this. It's like a pause to the conversation that's adding absolutely nothing, but just disrupting.
I'm sorry, Arthur. Like this isn't going to become a meta conversation.
You're not bridging anything. You're just making it more difficult. Look, I don't think it's possible to have this conversation. So I'm going to say this.
No one wants to. That's the problem.
Wait! Stop!
No, this is the okay.
Please,
I'm going to go. You guys have a good one.
No. Oh my God. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with him though. Like the thing is, like all I did was try to have this conversation, and what Kalinda, you're saying to me is like, just use a different word. I don't think we're actually going to have the conversation if I use a different word. We're going to fake agree on stuff. But yeah, I said my piece. I want to go. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Bye, Johan. Okay. MiRootsie, I just want to say, I was going to ask you to explain what do you mean by performative, but I guess because I don't think that it's performative, or I don't think that like it's performative when if someone tweets something like a cringe joke about Africa and she gets on a plane and then like 10 hours later she gets off that plane and finds out she lost her job because that everybody in the world canceled her. That goes way beyond performative to me.
So what I'm saying by performative is like I think the Palestinian protesters, the Gaza protesters are a perfect example of performative wokeness, right? Like none of those people actually care about Gaza, but there's a performative aspect where they get likes and clicks for pretending like they do. And the more they pretend like they do, and the greater they appear to be caring about Gaza, the more likes and clicks they get, and it feeds on itself. That's the performative aspect. How that is translating into the real world is not to the extent that it is being performed online, right? When you look at how people actually voted regarding Israel and Gaza, it was a non-issue in the election, right? So it was much more something that was presented online as like this big left-wing progressive cause that nobody actually voted on. Right?
Okay. Yeah. Well, no, there were people who did vote on it. There were people who voted on it in Billboard, Michigan.
It was minimal. Like there is no data that shows that the Israeli-Gaza conflict affected anything about the U.S. national election.
I know, but that doesn't mean that people's lives are not impacted by people being performative online. So, for example, but it could be large numbers of individuals. Like Jews on those college campuses felt less safe.
Yes,
because
they did feel less safe. I'm not saying that they didn't feel less safe. What I'm saying is,
okay, but that's an impact.
What it sounds like Epic and Johan are continuing to focus on is their individual experiences. What I came in here saying was, I don't care if someone calls me a Karen. That's part of having to face kind of that backlash, is part of what will eventually move progress forward, right? So if I yes,
hey, do me a favor, instead of like shutting down every time I try to fucking tell you what I'm saying, just say you don't know what I'm saying because you didn't let me say it.
I don't know why you keep coming in just to interrupt me and then leave again.
Because you didn't let me do the same. I tried to say the same thing. I tried to say the same thing to you 14 fucking times, and you didn't let me get it out.
And telling me that I can't listen and I can't have the conversation and I can't understand
because you can't.
When I am not the person that has been interrupting, I'm not the person who's been aggressive.
Yes, you have.
I'm not the person that keeps dipping out of the conversation. Time for some self-reflection, people.
Hold on.
MiRootsie, I tried to say the same thing to you 14 fucking times. I didn't get past the first sentence. You cut me off every time to tell me how you already knew what I hadn't said yet. I don't know how the fuck you have that mind-reading capability.
You just can't show people disagreeing with you, Epic. Grow a set. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Disagreeing with you is capable. People can understand what you're saying and still disagree.
You need to actually let someone say the fucking words.
That is rich coming from you, Epic. That is rich coming from you.
Okay,
you are the king of fucking interrupting people.
I'm gonna server mute both of you again. Okay, I would like. Okay, I don't think, MiRootsie, I don't think that what is being, or like that what you're saying is what is being said. I don't think that this is just about individual experiences. I don't really think that I agree with that, because the problem is that people feel like their issues are not being dealt with and that they're not being heard. And that's why you have, like, here in Canada, for example, you had Jewish people saying, I don't think the liberals actually give a fuck about anti-Semitism, and I feel unsafe in Toronto right now because of all these insane fucking protests, or because of, like, I think there was like there was like an attack, or like a fucking parade, or like a protest march that went through a Jewish neighborhood in Toronto, and people felt very fucking unsafe there, having people outside of their houses screaming about like Palestine and shit, or like, you know, attacks and stuff. And I think that, like, these are problems that if you feel unsafe, or if you feel like nobody cares about the issues that you have, then you're going to go and vote for the other party. And I obviously this doesn't apply to everybody, but like it is something that probably matters, you know. Okay. And I know, but
remember when I brought up the proportionality part before? That is what I'm talking. This is the proportionality part that I'm talking about. The performative nature is always greater online than the impact on the ground. So if
but
the ground
know that.
Then
30%. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
But the impact matters, though.
Hold on. Phenomenal.
You're the one that 3 different people can somehow understand each other, but you're mischaracterizing.
Disagree with you. I understand you. I dis-fucking-agree with you, Epic. It is possible for people to disagree with you.
MiRootsie, I need you to listen to these words. Every time I tried to get my point out, you cut me off less than halfway through. I never once got it out.
I'm sorry. I could I'm a fighter.
So maybe you can actually, maybe instead of assuming what me and Johan are saying, maybe instead of assuming what we're saying, you can let me get it out once. Maybe one time?
Epic, literally, you have re-dropped into this conversation to interrupt me for the past 3 times you have said something.
Because you were mischaracterizing what I was saying. Because you were mischaracterizing what I was saying after you finished mischaracterizing what Johan said.
We were literally not talking about you at all.
You literally said what Johan was saying, and then proceeded to mischaracterize.
Okay,
I'm never gonna say anything about what you think or feel. I was giving my thoughts about the question that Colinda asked me.
What Epic and Johan are saying, and then you proceeded to mischaracterize again. After Johan tried to come in here to correct you, and after I tried to say the same thing.
Shut him up or I'm done. I'm sorry, but this is absolutely ridiculous. I get that you and him are tight. This is absolutely ridiculous.
It's not. I'm not trying to take sides between the two of you. It's just like Jesus fucking Christ. I'm trying to like moderate the conversation and be like fair and reasonable here or whatever. So how about we do it like this? One of you may speak and then the other may speak and I will mute the person who is not speaking. How about we do it like that, okay?
How about you and I just have the conversation we were having that I think was actually a good conversation about performativity?
Yeah, but
sure, just don't try to represent me or Johan's statements again because you have no fucking idea what they are. And
Epic,
I'd like to get a chance to
leave the conversation. It's not about you.
I'd like to be able to actually finish the argument I tried to make 14 times once before I go, so that at least the audience can
I have
understand.
no desire to have an argument with you until I fucking calm down because I am pissed as hell.
So at least the audience can understand, because at this point,
I think the audience got your point, Epic. You've interrupted it. You've interrupted me enough to make.
I think what's happening right now is proving my point. I think what's happening right now is proving my point pretty fucking clearly.
What, that you keep dropping into the middle of something that has nothing to do with you?
Hold on. He did. There was not a. Okay.
I'm trying to say one fucking thought this entire time, and you haven't let me, MiRootsie.
Yes, you've not.
Present parties need to decide whether they want to generate popcorn or a conversation.
No,
because this is the binary.
I left because after 14 attempts to say the same thing and getting cut off 14 times, I said, okay, this isn't going to happen. I'm just going to leave. And then the second I turn on the stream, I hear what Epic and Johan are saying, and it's just not what we were saying. So I just don't try to attribute anything to us because you didn't fucking listen, obviously.
If you want to have an actual conversation, you need to stop generating popcorn, because popcorn and
that's
conversation are mutually exclusive.
Arthur, you're not helping having an actual conversation. So I'm going to try to say this the 15th time. Maybe I can get it out. Then I'll go and I won't come back, okay? The uniqueness in this moment is the the level to which your life can be destroyed based on anything, anywhere. It's not just when you're on campus. It's this unique moment we have in the information era with the internet, and it's combined with the level to which this kind of cultural influence has kind of completely taken over a ton of institutions. And the effect on this can be things like a bunch of people after October 7th bashing in windows in every synagogue in San Francisco and painting swastikas on it. And then if you're at UC Berkeley and you say, hey, that seems kind of anti-Semitic, not only do you get disenrolled, but now no other UC will let you in because they think you're a Zionist. That's unique. And if you don't think it is, then we disagree. But at least now you've heard me say it for once. Thank you. Bye.
That was, I mean, honestly, like that was kind of like what I was getting at, was like that. Yeah, I don't know. People's like the internet makes it uniquely easy to destroy people's lives and these kinds of things. And it's not even just that. Like it's also, you know, like the fucking doxing shit that will go on. And yeah, like I know that Only P said in chat that the racism thing was pre-wokeness or whatever. But I mean, whatever the fuck you want to call it, this whole weird like social justice, like this weird like mob justice crap that people will do. And I know people on the right do it too. But I'm saying like it's not, this isn't something that people on the left should be doing. And so there's something needs to be done about like this toxic culture. And I don't think that, and the people to whom this is happening are not being heard because they just get dismissed. Do you know what I mean?
I understand what you mean. The point I was trying to make was because again, I thought we were having a conversation about national politics. So the point of the performativity aspect of this and the proportionality aspect of this is to not confuse online performativity with online or with real world proportionality.
Yeah, but
right?
Is it performative if your life gets destroyed? It might be performative for the person doing the destruction.
I think you're misunderstanding who I'm claiming to be performative here. I'm not claiming the victims of this, the people losing their jobs or getting the victims of the hate mobs online are the performative ones. I'm saying the hate mobs online are the performative ones.
Well, yeah, I don't disagree with that, but I'm not sure why that necessarily matters. Like, just because that they don't actually care about it doesn't mean that their actions have no impact. Like, I know that they have an impact, right?
I'm saying that address that impact proportionately. It feels like people are confusing online performativity with real world politics. If the
none of these people
30%, if on the ground this is a 30% problem, on the ground it should be a 30% solution.
Yeah, but it's not.
Right?
It's not a 30% problem though for all the Jews who feel unsafe on campus or who got
that
kicked
can
out.
change. If it's not, okay, if it's online a 90% issue, or if it's on the ground a 90% issue, then whatever the situation is on the ground should be met proportionately on the ground. It should not be met online. Like if it's a 90% problem online and a 30% problem on the ground, and we're giving it 90% on the ground, then we're taking our eye off the ball. I'm saying keep it the same as to what's actually happening in the real world.
Okay,
It should be stuff going online and conversations and tweeting back and forth and shit like that. Yes, but when we're talking about actual real world politics, then we need to address it as real world politics.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying that these things manifest in the real world as real world politics. And the problem is that there's a level of like, okay, so like, for example, I feel like the whole conversation about Israel-Palestine has been completely hijacked by like these fucking crazy leftist loons to the point now where the majority of Americans think it's a fucking genocide. And if you try to say anything against that, you were immediately shut down and said that you were I don't
said
know that you were.
The majority of Americans think it's a genocide. I don't think the majority of Americans think about it at all.
I mean, they might not think about it that much, but the problem is that when they do think about it or when they are asked about it, they have like the opinions that they have about it have zero nuance whatsoever because the whole conversation has been fucking hijacked by crazy people.
I don't know if the entire conversation online has been hijacked by crazy people. Absolutely, yes.
All right, well,
like
hold on.
Let's
ask Guppy and see what he has to say about current polling data. ChatGPT. Yes.
Did you name ChatGPT? That's concerning. We need to not name AI.
Listen, calling it ChatGPT is such an annoying mouthful, okay? SDA uses Perplexity AI, and because he was joking about how she's his lady, I started calling her Lexi, and then he started doing it too. It's just...
I had to get something to drink. You're going to hear me walking around my condo, and I apologize for that, but I have to get something to drink. My throat hurts.
No, that's okay. Please do. Also, if your doggo is there, please give your doggo some pets.
She went to daycare because I'm very good today.
Oh. Wait, she went to daycare because you don't feel very good today? Wouldn't she have snuggled you? Or do you not want to get her sick with...
Oh, I don't want to have to take her out.
Oh, I understand. That's fair. Okay, hold on. New chat. Okay. Do the majority of... Oh, no. I'm sorry. Hold on.
Now you're going to uncover, I need you to present a case wherein the methodology of the poll would align with what you're trying to use the poll to...
Well, no, it's all I'm going to... The question is very simple. Do Americans think Israel's committing genocide in Gaza? That's it. That's the question.
What does that mean?
Do Americans think that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza? Can you find me polling data about this and link to it, please? There we go. Now we'll let the clanker think for 5 minutes, and we'll reflect upon the fact that I literally just spent probably tens of thousands of dollars of OpenAI's money in order to run that query, which I am amused by every time.
You spent like cents, but that's fine. The question is, what are you trying to get the polling data to tell you? Let's say it comes back with 70% of Americans think Gaza is genocide. Then what?
Then it proves that the conversation's been hijacked by crazy loon people, and this is an issue because it's then going to impact on our Kalinda, you just killed 57,382 trees. True. No, well, yeah, it would, because Potentially. Now, honestly, to be honest with you, this is actually more complicated than this. This maybe Israel-Palestine might not even be the best example. I only bring it up because it's something that I've been following and I care about. I mean, foreign policy stuff is very difficult. For example, if you polled most Americans, they probably don't have positive views of Saudi Arabia, but the United States still gives money to Saudi Arabia and weapons too, despite the fact that politicians will get up on stage and be like, yeah, we know Saudi Arabia is not really our friend, but they'll still continue to give money to them. And I feel like the same thing's probably just going to happen with Israel. I don't think that they're just going to like completely disconnect from Israel. Now, maybe that might happen because more Americans are making such a huge thing about it and nobody actually gives that much of a fuck about Saudi Arabia. Whereas like with the Jews, everybody really cares about it.
And okay, and maybe this is just me like not being or maybe it's just me being too much of a normie, right? I don't think that this is I still think that Americans in general are favorable to Israel.
Like that well, I mean, they're not according to current polling data, but that might change after the Gaza conflict is over. Or rather, okay, let me rephrase that. The majority of Americans now are more sympathetic to Palestine than Israel, but that doesn't mean, and I've had this argument before with online leftists who are delusional. It doesn't mean they're anti-Zionists and they want Israel to be destroyed. You know, it doesn't mean they agree with Hassan. Like Hassan thinks that the majority of Americans have turned on Israel so much so that they now would like basically support what he wants, and that's not true. Most Americans still want 2 states. You know, and like I don't think they would vote for a candidate that was promising to like embargo Israel.
I think in general, Americans have always wanted 2 states.
Yes.
It might be that there's more support for Palestine now, but I think that's just because Americans didn't really know much about Palestine until recently, right? But I don't see the sentiment in America being abolish Israel, right?
No, and it's not.
And some of this, when we're talking about the online stuff and the individualization here, like the individual issues here, and I might be guilty of this too. I mean, there is no might. I am. I think a lot of us are just very selfish. Like we all have to give some of our pet causes. We kind of have to look at them and be like, okay, this is my pet cause. But if I have to sacrifice all of these other causes to move this pet cause forward, I'm going to lose. So nothing is going to move forward. And like, 2, that might not be the popular thing. Like we all we have to make sacrifices. And I don't see that as something that people are ever willing, or people are willing to do. And that I think is specific to this generation, right? The inability to be like, hey, my issue is important, but it might not be the biggest thing on the table right now.
I don't know if it's that unique or not or whatever. I imagine single issue voting has always been a thing, but no, okay. So let me just try to so the Israel-Palestine thing is like I guess like I feel like that's a different thing. Although fuck me, I'm sorry. I'm all over the place and scattered right now. Do you understand that there are people in the country who are voting on that though? That like people in and not just Dearborn, Michigan, but there are people in Michigan who were voting on it.
Yes, just like I understand in California that the trans issue is a bigger thing than it is in other places. What I'm saying is these are all like issues that we have. Oh, God, I wish I had better words today. These are all issues that we have to make kind of a proportional amalgamation of them, right? Like if we blow up everything into the biggest worst thing, then nothing is the biggest worst thing, right? So if woke is the biggest worst thing, then we're taking our eye off the ball at what I feel the data presents as the biggest worst thing, which is the economy. If we say Israel-Palestine is the biggest worst thing, then we're taking our eye off, we're taking our eye off the ball in different times. What I'm saying is address the issues as they present in the like in the way that they present, in the to the extent that they present.
Okay. It's not.
Maybe
hold
I'm
on.
the retard here.
Yeah, I know, Arthur. You
Here,
don't know
but I
what
don't
this
understand what this
conversation is about, but just,
it's not even what it's about. I'm just asking. I don't understand what the statement means.
Okay, can I
Things
just
can
try
get worse holistically. Go ahead.
Can I just okay. MiRootsie, I understand what you were saying about single issue voters and all of these other kinds of shit. So, for example, I've thought about this before too. I had this hypothetical come into my head a little while ago. I really, really care about Ukraine, even though I don't necessarily have like, well, I mean, I guess I feel like I kind of do have connections now because like I think that like Henry and Zan and Patriarch are all really cool people, and it's been really nice talking to them and everything. And I would like to visit Ukraine someday, but it's something that I care about a lot. And so, if I were an American and I were faced with a choice between having to choose between voting for a Democrat who was like a fucking stupid isolationist who didn't want to support Ukraine and who didn't want to support like any kind of foreign intervention whatsoever, and voting for like a fucking Republican like Donald Trump who did want to support foreign intervention and was going to give shitloads of money to Ukraine, that would be a hard decision for me to make. Although probably I would ultimately wind up having to choose the Democrat, especially if it was Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's a fucking, because he tried to like steal an election. Now if it was like, I might actually be like, you know what, fuck it. If it was like, I don't know, Mitt Romney or Marco Rubio or Nikki Haley or like a considerably more, or Adam Kinzinger, maybe I might be like, fuck it, I'm going to vote for the Republican,
Yeah.
Not, yeah.
And that's I'm not presenting it as a zero-sum game, Grievous. I'm presenting it as a game of, yes, we have to address multiple things at the same time, but we also have to win the election. So we have to address in the real world the things that are the biggest to the most people in the real world, to the extent that they are the biggest and the most people, right? Like if we're going to lose 90% of the vote because we only focus on trans issues, or we focus on trans issues as much as we focus on the economy, then we're going to lose the election, right? If trans issues are 10%, then we need to address them at 10%.
I agree. I don't think that.
Who disagrees?
No, wait, hold on. We're not.
We can only do the most important thing.
Wait,
I'm saying the opposite. And we can do all of these things, but we can't do all of these things 100% of the time at 100%.
But is there, nobody's saying that the Democrats should spend like shitloads of time on on like trans issues or whatever. In fact, people are saying that they should spend less time talking about that.
Specifically what someone said in chat, that I was presenting this as a zero-sum game, and I'm trying to explain that I'm not. I'm trying to do the opposite.
Yeah, okay, so, like, wait a minute. I feel like when you're talking about the Jesus Christ, it feels like in some ways this whole conversation really hasn't been about, like, what exactly is it that, okay, so thinking back to what Epic said about, like, how things are actually quite...
that because you hot drop in here and scream at me and interrupt me again.
No. But that was what I was trying to explain before anyway. I think that it's performative from the perspective of the people who are engaging in like the crazy cancellation and the shit that impacts people's lives. But for those people, it impacts their lives, and like that could then impact their vote. In fact, it's very possible that it will impact, like, like there's going to be some number of Jews who might just get fed up and leave, or like black people, for example, who are like, I think more black people voted for Trump this election than had ever voted for a Republican before. Yes. More Hispanic people voted for Republicans, and I think part of that was because that they were annoyed at like a lot of like the stupid woke shit or whatever, because they felt like Democrats weren't really speaking to their needs anymore, and I know in previous elections that had been the case too, because black people don't really want to defund the police, and yeah, like, so I think that that's something where you have like a bunch of online morons who are performatively signaling about how it's necessary to do a thing, and if you don't agree, you're just a racist bootlicker who loves cops, and then like you have actual black people out here being like, yeah, but we don't actually want to do this thing, and like the people that get impacted by that are not the performative people, it's the actual black people whose neighborhoods have more crime because there are now less cops there because they defunded or because they cut the amount of money to the police or whatever. And those guys, and like the black people want like real police reform, but not fucking no police. You know what I mean?
Yes, but that doesn't disagree with what I'm saying, right? I'm saying don't pander to the performativity by addressing this on the ground to the extent that we're seeing it being performed. Look at what's happening on the ground and address it to the extent that it's happening on the ground. If that's a huge extent, then address it to a huge extent. But I think we're conflating what's happening online with what's happening in the real world. Just like we're conflating what personally affects each of us with what is the biggest issue on the ground, right? I can tell you the things that personally affect me are not necessarily the biggest issues on the ground right now, right? The economic thing is not personally affecting me, but I have to, like, what's personally affecting me is women's right to choose and bodily autonomy. But I understand that the bodily autonomy can only be addressed insofar as it is an issue on the ground, even if that is the number one issue to me.
Yeah, but that can still be addressed by a plank in the Democratic platform, or
but I never said that it
yeah, okay, but I think that that's all that people like Johan or Epic or me, that's all we're asking for. None of us are asking that the Democrats need to spend an unreasonable amount of time talking about any of these things.
I never said they couldn't. I said the issues that I had with how I thought Johan and Epic were coming across, whether or not that's how they meant to come across, right, was that they seemed to be taking an issue that was singular to their area or local to their area or to them personally and extrapolating it to a greater extent than we're actually seeing it play out on the ground.
Well,
right?
they okay, yeah. Well, I mean, like, they weren't, because they said that at the federal or on the national level, the way they want this
ground
to be
and where
dealt with was.
Question.
Well, hold on. The way that they said that what they wanted, like, that on the national or on the federal level, they wanted the way they wanted this to be handled was for the candidate to say, why are you obsessing about this? This is like an issue. This is a state issue or whatever, or like let the, at least for some of it. But as far as like Insomniac, I like how you're writing it anti-sem because you don't feel like writing out the entire word. That's good. But yeah, like, that's not really like that's what they're saying. They're saying that they want, or that, like, they basically they just don't want to basically what it comes down to, or at least what it comes down to for Epic, because I know he said this to me in the past, is they just want the Democrats, actually I think Johan believes this too, to stop fucking caving to the small ass minority of crazy people in the party who probably aren't even going to vote for them anyway. In the same way as that I don't want Democrats to cave to people like Hassan Piker, who's probably not even going to vote for them anyway, because to these people it actually is all just performative and they don't actually care about these issues, and it's all just like a fucking social shit, like social group thing.
I also don't want them to cave to those people, but I also don't want them to play into what the Republicans are trying to do and have done so successfully in the past when controlling this narrative, right? So if we blow this up into a bigger thing that it is, that is what the Republicans want. That is what they want.
Do the Republicans...
They want us to come on here. They want us to drill down on issues like trans women in sports, because they know that doesn't matter on the national platform. That when we do that, we take we take our eye off the bigger picture, off the ball.
Yeah, I know.
And it doesn't matter.
They
do it in the
drill
direction
down.
of the left. But it doesn't matter if we make a statement in support of the niche lefty groups, or if we make a statement in support of the more mainstream position. The second we make a statement about that, the Republicans will run with it in whatever direction they want to go. My position is, say, flip it on them and be like, why are Republicans talking about, why are they wanting us to talk about trans people when we want to talk about the economy?
Okay, yeah, but that's basically, but that's like basically what we were saying, is that it should literally just be like, for, let's say, trans women in sports, it should be like that's a state issue, or like that's up to the leagues to decide. Why are Republicans obsessing about this? I'm not interested in talking about this. This is like a non-issue,
Yes,
and
they're not contradictory.
But that is different than making the statement that the Democrats are losing because we're too woke. That is saying that they want a television to make that statement and take that position is way different than being like, the thing that's making Democrats lose right now is that we're too woke. Those are two different things.
Okay, yeah, but so here's the thing, though. They're not, because...
Let's say they are. What's the disagreement?
No, I don't think they are. The reason why they're not is because that they... Sorry, Jesus Christ. God damn it, Arthur. Stop trying to, like, police this conversation. Holy fuck. I appreciate you. You're very well-meaning.
I think Arthur's doing a great job.
Okay, well, because I understand that he's just trying to like start content here or whatever, but
No, I'm not. I'm trying to cut through all the bullshit that's
well,
like conversationally
think
irrelevant. But yeah,
I
if
think
that's
that
not helpful, that's sorry. If my specific execution is not helpful, I'll take that to heart. Okay.
okay, well, I'm just saying that I don't know what that. Okay, I think that when people are saying Democrats are too woke, what they mean is that Democrats are caving to these extremists too much. That's what they mean, and then it makes it the whole party appear to be way more woke, and it means that
that is where a fundamental disagreement is. That they might be caving to them at the local level in California, but that is not panned out across the rest of the country. And by making it into a more hyperbolic thing than it is, we are playing into what the Republicans.
Even if that's the case, but the problem is that like on the national level, on the federal level, Kamala Harris never stood up against any of these people, and that's the issue. Is that she wouldn't say anything.
Did a lot of things wrong, right?
Okay, but the next candidate might have that same problem.
She did as good as she probably could, considering the circumstances in which she was tossed into it. But like going forward, I'm not seeing this as this huge issue. I see us making this into a bigger issue amongst ourselves. Then we are making it affect ourselves more than it would.
Well,
like we are creating this problem.
Hold on. Can I just ask, like, do you agree? Like, did you see what Epic was talking about? I don't know whether or not there was like after Gavin Newsom came out and said that stuff on the podcast, there was a whole shitload of people who came out and called him a transphobe because he said that he agreed it was a fairness issue in women's sports. And that's what I'm worried. And like he didn't cave to that. He didn't walk it back and apologize. And I'm worried that like a lesser candidate might have done that. That's the thing. I just don't want to cave to these people.
Those people that were calling him the transphobes are the performative people online.
Yeah, I know, but they're a problem because people fucking listen to them.
What I'm saying is that their performativity is greater than their impact. Their performativity of calling him a transphobe is greater than their impact of voting. That's the block of people that most likely don't vote, that weren't going to vote for him anyway.
But why do Democrats cave to these people then? I agree with you.
But they're not, and they didn't. And there's no record, like there's no trend of that happening at the national level, right?
Well, other than, but like, Kamala did, and I would argue that that was part of what caused her to lose. Which
that did not make it. That absolutely 100% was not.
No, I mean, I don't think that. I just don't think that helped. Is what I'm saying. I'm not necessarily saying that. Like it was
by us pretending that is why Kamala lost, or that had any.
I'm not saying that.
And that's us taking our eye off the ball, because that's not why Kamala lost. It didn't have an impact because outside of the performative people online, nobody cares.
Can I ask you something? Do you think that when people go to the ballot box and vote, they're thinking about a single thing in their minds and absolutely nothing else whatsoever? Or do you think I believe earlier in this conversation, you said they think about like lots of other things, right? That they'll make a list of things that matter to them. Do you think that like there was nobody who on their list of things, the fact that Kamala Harris had no spine and that she was perceived to be like too much of a wokey, you think that wasn't on anyone's list? I'm not saying it was necessarily at the top of anyone's list, but like do you think that like there was nobody to whom this mattered even the littlest amount?
Of course there were people to which it mattered, but that's back to the proportionality. That the amount of people that drove them to change from Kamala to Trump or to not show up because of Kamala. Like, let's not overblow what that number is.
I'm not overblowing it. And I'm saying her response should have taken 3 seconds, and she should have literally just been like, that doesn't matter. Why are we talking about this?
I feel like I'm being the one mischaracterized now. I'm not saying that never happens, or people didn't think that, or people didn't vote on that. They did. What I'm saying is, like, why are we making this bigger than it needs to be, right? Like,
hold on. I'm not making it.
the opposite side of me is the one incapable of having the conversation, because I also, like, I'm trying not to be hyperbolic, but I hear a lot of hyperbole coming from the other side right now. And I'm saying, calm the fuck down. This isn't the issue that you are making it out to be. Yes, we can address it. Yes, it is an issue. It is not what is driving the machine of populism right now to the right, or the craziness on the left.
Okay, well, I mean, I do just want to say, I'm just curious. Do you think that, at least in terms of Republicans, and also, hold on, sorry, fuck, there was something else that I was going to say, and I feel like I've lost it now, or what have you. I understand what you're saying, and that's not really what I'm saying. I also don't think that people, like, I don't know that Johan thinks that that this whole thing is entirely about wokeness, and like that's the only thing that matters or whatever. It's just a thing that we decided to talk about. Like, I can still have conversations about that, or about like trans people in sports or whatever, whilst recognizing that nobody gives a fuck about it. I mean, for fuck's sake, I've had like who knows how many debates about Israel Palestine, and we all understand that Americans don't really care that much about that, broadly speaking, or at least it's not like Americans don't really give a fuck about foreign policy. But I'm still going to have a debates about it because it interests me.
But I'm addressing the fact that what I have heard the past couple of days is most Americans think this. This is the reason Democrats are losing.
I don't Johan never I don't know if Johan ever said this is the reason Democrats are losing. I believe that he said that most Americans don't like wokeness, but I don't know that he ever claimed that that's why Kamala lost.
Is that this is a big fucking deal. It's the biggest fucking deal, and it's the worst fucking deal. And I think for a portion of your chat, me included, the reason we all recoiled from that was because to think that this is the biggest fucking deal and this is the worst fucking deal is insanity, and is playing into what the Republicans want.
Okay. Well, by the way, Republicans do make it the worst. Like, there are absolutely people on the right, or like in rural America, who voted on this shit, on like trans people and shit, because they spend all day watching Fox News, and this was, yeah. I'm just saying, yeah, those people exist, but yeah.
Yes. Course, all of these people exist. Let those people be crazy. Paint them to be crazy about this, right? Right now, they're baiting us into trying to be as crazy as they are about it, and we're letting them.
Okay, yeah, but I don't want to be crazy about it. I just want, all I want is for Democrats to be able to answer the question when they are asked about it. That's it. That doesn't mean they need to spend like any inordinate amount of time on it. Like, all I want is for them to be able to say, like to not cave on this issue to like the most extreme people within the party. That's it. It's very easy to say, this is an issue that should be left up to the states or the leagues, and then to go back to, why are the Republicans so obsessed with this issue? We should be talking about the economy. That's something Americans actually care about. You know, like, I feel like you can throw something in there that gets your position that you think this is a state's issue, meaning that you're not actually going to do anything about it, meaning that you will hit on anybody for whom, like, this might matter even just a little bit, so that's not something they need to give a fuck about.
That is also my position. But then I feel like then you guys are going on to, again, be hyperbolic about this. Like, I'll say, yeah, that's okay. And then you'll be like, somehow it will once again get blown into, but this is the worst thing ever. And this
is not supposed to be portrayed as a worst thing ever. It is supposed to be portrayed as an effect on the discourse, which is negative. You are talking about the discourse as well in presenting a criticism that that in your perception, more attention is being dedicated to this issue than is deserved. Our criticism of the issue is that the discourse is captured by people who are making it unhelpful by virtue of, I say ours. The Joanne's position is that the assumptions of wokeness generate this inordinate amount of attention. So there is, like, the subjects, while connected, are orthogonal to one another. You're not really, in this conversation, addressing the concerns that John raised. And Epic, to the extent that he was a participant, was saying that the issue is relevant in some situations. There are places where it is a thing and it is important, and it deserves like 70% of the attention, call it. While nationally, It's not, and it shouldn't deserve the 70% of attention. And this was a miscommunication that baffles me, that it took like 3 hours to not clear up. But yeah, there you go.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, I mean, I think that about clears that up. Wait, hold on. Wait a minute. Johan, am I pronouncing your name right? It is Johan, right? With like the Y is, or the J is pronounced like, because it's a German name, yes? I feel like some people are just not saying it like that on purpose. You're the only one who pronounces her. Oh, okay, well, thank you. That's just because I know how to pronounce German names. I mean, I think Epic does too, but he's probably just purposefully being an American. I don't know.
I don't think I heard Epic say it.
Okay. Anyway, are we all satisfied now? Do we all understand?
Yeah, I mean, I'm frustrated with the whole thing, but yeah. I don't think that there was ever enough disagreement to warrant the vitriol that I received in this conversation.
I'm sorry. I think the problem is we were all everybody would nobody understood what was being said, and people were talking past each other.
I think the issue
you don't. This is a communications problem. Instead of being an actual substantive disagreement.
I'm going to push back against you here. I think that Epic understands me, and I think I understand Epic. We just disagree. Like, sometimes that just happens. Two people that agree on the underlying premise can disagree on how we think that underlying premise should be addressed, or the extent to which that underlying issue is happening. That isn't us misunderstanding each other. That's just us disagreeing, and it's fine. And every time somebody disagrees, if you're accusing them of, oh, you're not understanding me, or you're gaslighting me, that is more toxic than the issue that people have with the wokeness thing. Like, no, sometimes it's okay to understand each other and still have fundamental disagreements. Like, it is possible that people disagree with me. I don't get it. I don't think you should disagree with me. I think I'm right all the time, but that's because I'm me. I can still understand that people can understand what I'm saying and disagree with it. That's an okay thing to happen.
The sentence you said is correct. However, in my view, you are misapplying it to this situation.
I don't think I'm misapplying it to how Epic saw this conversation. I think Epic legitimately does not understand that I just disagree with him.
No, I think,
sorry,
okay.
No, hold on. You don't disagree, actually.
I disagree with
how miscommunicating. You're talking about two different issues because they're using similar words but are concerning different things in the universe. Does that make sense?
One second, I just gotta do.
I feel bad here because I have opinions, but I feel like it feels like people think I'm just taking Epic's side because he's
it's fine if you agree with Epic, it's
contributor to the stream or whatever.
It's okay to disagree with me. It's okay. To just
listen, MiRootsie,
we understand that it's okay to disagree with you. What we're saying is that you either are miscommunicating or you don't actually disagree.
Okay. Okay. Basically, what I think here is that I do feel like Epic wasn't really able to get his point out, and I think this was a problem, and you did come off as pretty aggro when you were interrupting him all the time, especially towards the end, and I understand you were frustrated. That being said, I will say it's not like Epic is never aggro in conversations either, and you were obviously screaming at each other, and at least in part it came across as you being more aggro, or at least earlier on. I know. Yes, Vanaloven, he did interrupt her too. I'm aware. Towards the end of the conversation, it felt very, it felt more like he wanted to say something and you kept cutting him off, which did come across as really not great. Apart from that, yeah, there were other times where he was interrupting you, and like I said before, part of it was that you seemed like the louder one because you're on your shiny MacBook with the nice new microphone that you have, and he was on his phone, and so your voice was just louder. You know what I mean?
I disagree.
What? No, I mean like the whole actually like your volume was louder than his volume.
It's okay to disagree. I disagree with how Johan characterized me yesterday. I disagree with how Epic and that characterization of me this time.
I actually think I might have disagreed with how Johan characterized you yesterday, but that's a different.
I just wanted to say that MiRootsie, I love you. Okay, I hope we're chill.
You too, Epic. Don't worry,
I do want
kids,
to
we're
say,
not getting divorced. We've just
yeah. Mommy and Daddy are getting along great, chat. But I do want to say, MiRootsie,
love you any less.
the thing that you're saying you disagree with me on, I don't disagree with you on that. So that's what's been so frustrating, because I couldn't agree more with everything I just heard you say. And that's what I've been trying to say. So I don't know what we even disagree on. I really don't know.
Maybe we don't disagree. Maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe we don't.
Because I really don't think this should be a national conversation. My whole effort why I think candidates should have better answers on this is to the extent that I believe those better answers will prevent this from being a big conversation. So maybe we have different tactics there, but the strategic objective of not bringing this to the national discourse, I could not possibly agree more with you.
Well, good. I'm glad. Then I agree with you too, and I still love you. And don't worry, kids. You'll just get 2 Christmases. It's not that bad.
Okay, can I, Epic, wait, Epic, do you have to go? Because you know what? I think that it would be funny, because now I am determined to find something that I disagree with that I can fucking fight you on. So I
have like 5 or 10 minutes. I'm just sitting, I'm kind of waiting in a parking lot here until the plane I'm gonna fly lands. So if you want to chat for like 5 or 10 minutes, sure.
Okay.
You can disagree with me on the fact that I think flying is terrifying and I hate doing it.
You know what? Believe it or not, I am terrified of riding in the back of a plane. I don't like being in a plane that I don't have control over. I don't like that feeling.
Have to be medicated, get to board the flight first, cry out loud to the point where like the flight attendant has to come over and comfort me, terrified of flying.
I just have a hard time like not being in the cockpit. Like when I can see the instruments and I know what's going on, I feel very comfortable because I know what I'm doing. I know the thing with flying is if you do everything right, you're going to be fine. Like you're good. Usually what kills people is pilots that make stupid mistakes. Something like 70% of crashes.
Like I'm always thinking about like, what if that one mechanic like did one screw too loose?
Yes.
And the whole plane is going to explode and I'm going to die.
Yeah. And your thoughts. So for me, I'm comfortable in a plane I'm flying because I do the pre-flight. I fill out the paperwork. I sign the balance sheet. It's my plane. I know what's going on with the plane. I don't like climbing in a commercial plane that I don't know about. So I get you there.
To the extent that I'm taking a train to Reno this holiday season.
Well, I'm not quite that bad. But genuinely, when I'm in the back of like an Airbus or a Boeing and someone else is flying it, like every time we hit a bump, like in my head, I'm thinking about all the terrible things that can cause to the aircraft. But if I'm in the cockpit and I can see it, I just don't have that feeling.
That's actually funny. Wait, well now I want to ask: Are you flying someone else's plane, or are you not? Are you flying, or are you?
I'm actually in order to potentially open up my career options in case I need to not re-up my contract because things are getting crazy. I'm actually going to log some hours on a twin-engine commercial airframe and kind of work on a type rating there because I would like to get a type rating for the DC-10 because I would like to open up the possibility to go to CAL FIRE in the future. When I say the future, I mean like when I'm done with the Air Force. But I would like to keep flying after I retire. And if I get a type rating on that plane, it can help me transition to the civilian workforce later.
Who is that kid?
A really old tri-engine jet that
it's used for firefighting.
Oh, neat.
So do you want to be the person that dumps the foam on the fire?
Well, I'd like to have the option to transition to that in case Pete Hegseth continues to be my Secretary of Defense for much longer.
Oh my God. Yeah. Wait, do we think, hold on. Do we think
is in the waiting room, by the way.
Yeah, I know.
And I want to point out that Johan says that Epic does disagree with MiRootsie, but I don't want to really get it. I just wanted to bring
maybe we disagree on tactics, on like what the best word response is, but
what
we both agree that this. Yeah.
What he means is what you guys disagree on is MiRootsie, all that stuff you were talking about with the constricting of rights. And how Johan feels like that's a much bigger deal than you do, MiRootsie, because that you think that's something that will pass and that everything will be better at the end. And I don't really know how you could, because Johan feels like that's not the case for currently for, like, let's say Jewish people, for example.
So I'm going to be honest. This is one I disagree with Johan. I do think things are going to get better. I think we're on the other end of the worst part of this.
I do think that this is just it's a natural thing that happens in society. But the general trend has been always towards progress and greater acceptance and better life for people, right? Like, and I am the most black-pilled person in the world. Like, everybody knows I'm fucking black-pilled about just about everything. But this is the one thing I think that I'm legitimately not black-pilled on, is that these things, this is a generation, it happens every generation. We call it something different. Like, yes, it is to an extent greater with each generation, but that's because we're accepting, like, we're trying to bring more people into the fold every generation. So like one group of people or some groups of people are going to see some sort of like tightening or acceptance of maybe they're not as powerful or as loud or as they used to be in that moment. But then that will eventually expand again. And then it will contract a little bit again, not as much as it contracted the prior time, and then it will expand more than it expanded the prior time. Like, I think that's just the general arc and how the universe works.
Johan is saying that he doesn't think things are going to get worse, but he's saying that things are bad right now and that it should be fought against. But I think he's specifically, like, he's talking about it for, like, for example, like the way in which, like, the whole thing with Jewish people and how they're basically getting fucked right now, or like, and the fact that, like, you know, woke people don't care about it, and anti-Zionism is like not seen as like that big of a deal, and like because people think it's just criticism of Israel.
Yes, let me be very clear. The people that I am talking about right here needing to take a step back are people like me. Okay, like it was the Karen thing, right? Like, I'm okay being called a Karen for the next 10 years if it means in 20 years everybody has more of a say. That changes depending on the group that's being constricted and to what extent they're being constricted. Obviously, this is a bigger issue for Jewish people. It's a more violent issue. It's a more dangerous issue for Jewish people, and it should be treated that way, right? What I'm saying is that how this affects Jewish people is not how it affects white women, is not how it affects white men or black men or black women. The same way that the immigration issue and the immigration rights that are being constricted for Hispanic people or brown and black immigrants are greater than white immigrants. And we need to address it as such.
Yeah. Also, if I can just add, because I think this is kind of a failure, maybe on my part, to communicate. And I was thinking this when I was listening. One of the best examples of the type of anti-woke stuff I'm talking about. So obviously, as we all know, the male suicide rate is alarmingly high in the United States. It keeps going up too.
Oh yeah.
And in certain California universities, that has been something you can't bring up because the response will be, "What are you, a men's right activist? What do you not care about feminism?" And when Gavin Newsom came out a few weeks ago and said, you know, male suicide's a problem and we need to start talking about it, and the Democratic Party has really let young men down, I think that is a message that a lot of young men in kind of bad places mentally have really good reactions to. And I think that is an anti-woke message. And I think that is him having a bit of a spine. And maybe he pisses off a couple progressives at UC Berkeley, but it's okay because they weren't going to vote for him anyways. And that is like the strategy I'm talking about. And that is the extent of it. I don't mean anything more than that, or that this is the biggest issue in politics or anything.
No, I agree. I think that's a perfect example of the woke thing, right? Like that. I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a huge problem, I think. Yeah, but oh, also I was gonna ask before we, like, I guess, like, we can go back to, I know people in chat are saying that I should get back to doing other stuff, but you know what, honestly, tomorrow I can also do that other stuff too. Like, I'll be around tomorrow, guys. Or actually, oh, well, no, not tomorrow, because tomorrow's my day off. I keep forgetting tomorrow's Monday. I mean, on Tuesday, like, I'll still be able to, like, go through the content that I was planning to if I decide to end. But I just want to say, how much longer do we think that, do we think Hexeth is going to go? I feel like Kash Patel's the next one on the chopping block, honestly.
I don't know if Exit's gonna go. I certainly hope he does. But it seems like he's pretty firmly there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't think XF is going anywhere. I lost my bet. I bet that Rubio was going to be the first to go because I thought Rubio was going to be the most sane, and that was just wasn't going to fly. But I lost that bet.
You know, apparently Rubio has been kind of pushing back on some of this stuff in private behind closed doors. I think Rubio's just smart enough where he knows exactly how many steps he can take before it's too far and he gets fired. Which, you know, in some ways makes him more evil because he knows exactly what he's doing. Yeah. But in other ways, I'm kind of glad he's there instead of like another J.D. Vance type.
Yeah.
And I know Abik and I did discuss a little bit that we just said that I think Kelly should be the nominee.
Oh, Mark Kelly?
And not Gavin
Kelly. Yes. Well, to be clear, and I said this to MiRootsie, but just for the audience's sake, when I say I like Newsom, that's me saying I think Newsom is the most qualified person currently running to be president. I think he has the most experience and he would be the best president. I don't think he's necessarily the most likely candidate to win. I leave that up to the primary process. It is my belief that the person who wins the primary is not all the time, but more often than not, the person most competitive to win the national race. So I don't know who's going to win the primary.
And this is my issue with Gavin Newsom. I like him. I think he's perfectly capable. Obviously, I would vote for him. I think coming from a Midwest background, like I grew up in Michigan, right? Coming from a Midwest background, I see the people I grew up at looking at Gavin Newsom and thinking the word smarmy. Smarmy California, too perfect, too polished politician. When I see people in the Midwest look at Mark Kelly, they see somebody that they want to be, but also who they could be. Right? Because he's bald and he's more.
Yeah, Newsom went to an elite university in the richest part of the country, governs the richest state. He's a California elitist. Yes, I understand. I think that will be a big problem for him. I guess I have two responses. The first response would be, I want to be clear. I think Newsom and Kelly are the two most qualified people in the Democratic Party to be president. And I think if either of them win, we're in great hands, just to be clear. But second, I would say that primaries are unpredictable, and I don't know what's going to happen. I think Newsom and Kelly both have a decent shot, but it could be some candidate none of us even know the name of right now. Like Obama was nobody 2 years before the primary in 2005. True. So you never know. I'm just looking at who I think is the most fit. I think Newsom's my first choice just because he has experience as a governor of a huge state with millions of people, and Kelly would be my second choice.
Yeah, I think
I'd happily vote for either.
Yeah, I know that you said that most likely you think that the person that comes out of the primary, or that we should just vote on who we think is the most qualified. I might not be qualified to say who is the most likely to win, but I feel like I should take that into account when I vote in the primary, right? Like if I voted just based off of who I thought was the best candidate, the person that I would vote for, like without taking into account who could win the general, like I think that's how we would end up with like a crazy person on our ticket, right?
Sure. But I guess my counter would be that the primary it mirrors the electoral college. You do have to win multiple states. You can't just win the coasts. And if it is true that Newsom is too much of a California elitist to win a to win a national race, I think it would also prevent him from winning a primary. I think he would lose the primary contests across the Midwest, like you're saying he might.
How about you and I run for president?
I don't want to be president. I have no interest in that.
I'll be president.
I mean, I would love to be SecDef. Yeah, I'd have a lot of that if I ran for federal office, it would be in the defense establishment. I wouldn't be interested in executive or lieutenant. And to be honest, if I do ever run for office, it is most likely going to be at a state level in California because I am a federalist and I believe that stuff matters. And I think you need good leadership both federally and at the state level. So that's how I look at it.
I become more federalist every day as we get further and further into the Trump.
You know what? That's the silver lining of Trump. I think he's reminding Democrats that states' rights aren't just a shield that Republicans use cynically to defend anti-gay stuff. It's actually a core part of our democracy.
This is the most federalist and the most pro-Second Amendment I have ever been in my life.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. That is the silver lining. I think a lot of Democrats are finally saying, you know what? Maybe states actually do matter. Maybe we should use state power to accomplish things. I think that's the only good thing coming out of all of this.